home of the Philadelphia Eagles.
They've got him. It's a sack.
Sixers.
Oh, baby.
And Flyers.
He scored!
97.3 ESPN. WENJ. WENJ HD. Millville, Atlantic City. A Town Square media station serving all of South Jersey.
You know what the change of music means if you've been listening to 97.3 ESPN long enough. Mike Gill is embarking on his little four-way getaway vacation, and me, Josh Hennig, filling in with hanging out with you 2 to 6 p.m. here on 97.3 ESPN. We got a busy show to get into today. You know, we got a new round of rumors and speculation when it comes to the Philadelphia Eagles. Thanks or no thanks to ESPN's Get Up this morning. How about that embarrassing loss by the 76ers? You might not realize this, but you saw history last night. Not the right kind of history. On top of all of that, the Phillies are in spring training, and I am personally happy that we got to hear from Zach Wheeler yesterday. We'll play you some of that audio coming up here. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Don't forget, you can join the conversation on the White Horse RV Center text board. White Horse RV Center in Williamstown and Galloway. Your RV adventure starts here at White Horse RV, 609-403-0973. Eagles, Sixers, Phillies, and more coming up here on 97.3 ESPN. Earlier edition of Knicks Nuggets today again. Nick Earnshaw will join us at 3 p.m. Football at 4 with Andrew DeCecco at 4. And Sports Illustrated Sixers reporter and insider Austin Krell joins us at 5 p.m. Also to come here on Hanging with Hennig on 97.3 ESPN. I'm going to get to the Eagles stuff in just a bit because I find that the latest round of speculation about the Eagles is actually fascinating. And I have a lot of my own questions that have been born out of the conversation that was had this morning between ESPN NFL insider Jeremy Fowler, former NFL executive Louis Riddick, and former NFL wide receiver Andrew Hawkins. But I do have to start with the Sixers, because what we saw last night was frankly embarrassing. Look, I get it. Joel Embiid didn't play last night. But this is now the 6th time the New York Knicks have beat you in your building. That is the longest winning streak for a team at Philadelphia, at the 76ers, in the last 40 years. Last night was the largest margin of victory for a Knicks team against the 76ers in the 519 times those two teams have played. So what we basically learned last night is that what we saw last night has never happened before. And how do we prevent it from happening again? Well, I don't know if there's a clear answer to that, because it's very obvious to me that the 76ers have a huge problem on their hands. And I think part of that problem, the origin of it, is the Jared McCain trade. I think Daryl Morey made a massive miscalculation when he traded away Jared McCain. And I'm not saying Jared McCain is the second or third best player on the team. But what I am saying is, look at what the Sixers have done since they traded away Jared McCain, and then look at what Jared McCain has done since he has gone to the Thunder. By the way, 8 points in 75 seconds last night. That's just one part of the puzzle here. Since they traded away Jared McCain, the Philadelphia 76ers are a 1-3 ball club. They lost at the Lakers, at Portland, and home against the Knicks. And frankly, they were kind of fortunate to beat the Suns in Phoenix last Saturday. Since Jared McCain got sent away from Philadelphia, all he's doing is in almost 17 minutes a game, he is averaging 8 points, and he is shooting 50% from three. And if you go back and remember how distraught Tyrese Maxey was when they made the trade, how upset he was to make that deal. Not that he was necessarily crying, but he basically was like, look, I'm sad that McCain's not here. And you got to wonder if Maxey is saying that, how does that impact the rest of the team? We don't always factor in, and apparently Daryl Morey didn't factor in, the importance of having chemistry, cohesiveness, guard depth. And I might remind you, Daryl Morey was the one who explained the day after making the trade that they made the Maxey trade for a specific reason. And you might be like, Josh, what reason is that? Well, I will let Daryl Morey, not me telling you what he said, Daryl Morey, I will let the man speak for himself.
Because we're playing well, we were trying to upgrade the team and add to the team now. That was goal number one. Obviously, no deal materialized, including using the picks we got from the Jared deal. We were trying to, that's why we did that move a little early. We're trying to reuse those draft picks to add now. We do feel like this deal sets us up better in the future, but we understand that we were looking to add now, and nothing materialized.
The Jared McCain deal was meant to help you get another deal done. And when the other deal didn't get done, you're like somebody at the altar waiting for your significant other, and that significant other bails on you on the wedding day. The Sixers were left with no replacement for McCain, with no upgrade at the deadline, and now you're seeing the ramifications of that miscalculation. This team had specific needs at the deadline. They needed more rebounding. Didn't get it. They needed more athleticism at the wing position. Didn't get it. They needed more three-point shooting. Didn't get it. The 76ers got worse at the deadline. And I'm just supposed to accept that Daryl Morey said, oh man, we tried, but it didn't work out. This is the problem when it comes to this organization. And frankly, at times, Philadelphia sports in general. Because speaking as a fan, I'm shaking my fist at the TV and saying, I have seen every other team make moves, make upgrades, and you didn't. Now, the objective analyst who has to get behind the microphone here on 97.3 ESPN, Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill, broadcasting live from the Ocean Casino Resort Studios here on 97.3 ESPN. Text board is open at 609-403-0973. I said, you know what? I'm going to give it a little bit of time to see how this plays out. Well, I've seen how it played out. You're 1-3 now since trading McCain. By the way, before you traded away Jared McCain, you were a winner of 5 straight games. Now, again, I'm not saying Jared McCain was the most important player on the team, but obviously his loss and the lack of substantive upgrades in return from him has put this team on its heels. It wasn't the Paul George suspension that put you here. It was Daryl Morey saying, look, we made this deal with the idea that we could make other deals, and they didn't happen. And now the deadline, the 76ers got to do a hard look at themselves and figure out, where did we go wrong? How can we pick our face up off the floor and get back to business? Because the reality is that when you come out of the All-Star break, you are basically going to be on a sprint to the end of the season. We are more than halfway through the NBA season. The Sixers have played 54 games. We are beyond the halfway point. And now, thanks to that embarrassing loss last night to the Knicks, you are now 4.5 games behind the Knicks. You are 5 games behind the Celtics. You are 3.5 games behind the Cavs. If the season ended right now, do you know who the Sixers play in the first round? Yeah, the Knicks. The team that just embarrassed you. But it's okay, Daryl. You tried your best, right? This is the problem. When us who are not working for the organization, when us, the fans, the objective analysts, the people who are watching the game, when our eyeballs tell us one thing that is different than the people who are running the team, I don't want you telling me you tried hard. I don't want you telling me that you did your best. I don't want you telling me that everything's going to be okay when my eyes tell me it's not. Again, Jared McCain leaves the Sixers in 3 games. 3 games with the OKC Thunder. Already making an impact. Shooting 50% from 3. Already. He's barely been there a minute. And he looks like he belongs more in Oklahoma City than he ever did in Philadelphia. The Jared McCain trade may very well be the straw that breaks the camel's back. Because when the Sixers get knocked out in the first, second round again this postseason, and Jared McCain is playing in the Western Conference Finals with the OKC Thunder, do we really believe that Nick Nurse and Daryl Morey's jobs will be safe? I don't think so. I think that at some point, someone has to have a heart-to-heart talk with Daryl Morey and Nick Nurse and say, what's wrong here? How did you have this guy? He goes somewhere else and they're using him way better than you ever did. How is it that you made a deal with the idea of making more trades and you couldn't get a deal done? How is it that there were obvious needs to upgrade the roster and you couldn't get them done, and what you were more interested in is getting under the luxury tax? Now, maybe that's part of the problem as well. Maybe the part of the problem of the 76ers is, did the ownership tell the front office to save us some money? I don't know. Maybe they did. Again, I'm not accusing anyone of anything. I'm not saying Josh Harris or Bob Myers are meddling. I'm not saying that Daryl Morey is a loser at life. I'm not saying Nick Nurse is the worst coach in the NBA. But I don't need my buddy Joe to text me as he does after most Sixer games to tell me the Sixers are playing bad. I can see they're playing bad. I can see they're having problems. I can see they are struggling. This is absolutely insane. It is absolutely insane to have the Knicks do what they did to you last night, and we enter the All-Star break, frankly, as miserable as we've ever been about the Philadelphia 76ers. And by the way, they're going to make the postseason. They're 30-24. They are ahead of, let me count this up real quick. 1, 2, 3, 4 teams that are currently fighting for the play-in tournament. And none of them have 30 wins. And with the Sixers schedule down the stretch, in theory, they should be able to get to roughly 40-some wins pretty easily. Because part of the games during that stretch are the New Orleans Pelicans, the Utah Jazz, the Memphis Grizzlies, the Brooklyn Nets, the Kings again, the Jazz again, the Bulls, the Wizards, Pacers twice, Milwaukee again. There are wins on the schedule. So they're going to make the postseason. But as in most situations, they're going to let us down again because they were more concerned about getting under the luxury tax than they were improving the team. Let's check in on the Whitehorse RV text board at 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Ray at EHT chimes in and says, I'm not a real big fan of Nick Nurse. How do we go into halftime and come out playing worse than we started off the game? Makes no sense to me whatsoever. What is he ever saying at halftime? He needs to switch things up or stop the bleeding. He never calls timeouts. Why are we going the way we are? I do not like Nick Nurse. He goes on to say, we don't have any good rebounders. He mentions Dominic Barlow. I thought was going to be the one to do it, but Andre Drummond's looking like he doesn't even want to be here anymore. A couple things there, Ray and HT. One, the Nick Nurse thing, I'm very curious to see at the end of this season. Does Daryl Morey turn Nick Nurse into the scapegoat? Or does the organization, Bob Myers and Josh Harris sit down and say, we need to clean house? There is a strong possibility that Daryl Morey could try to save his job and then get rid of the coach and say, it didn't work out with Nick Nurse. We're going in a different direction. That is certainly a possibility. Listen, I have been, Ray and EHT, incredibly disappointed in the Nick Nurse hire. I really thought the Nick Nurse, a guy who has a ton of experience of, how do I put this? Nick Nurse had a long history in Toronto of getting the most out of his players, making the best out of a bad situation, winning games he wasn't supposed to, getting role players to not just buy into their role, not just excel in their role, but play above expectations in their role. He hasn't really done that here. In fact, I haven't seen almost any of the Nick Nurse that we saw in Toronto in Philadelphia. Now, is that because of the rosters he has been handed? Is that because of, I don't know. What is it? I don't have a distinct answer for the why, but you're right. I think Nick Nurse is part of the problem. Now, to your point about the rim protector and Dominic Barlow not being what we thought it would be and Andre Drummond stuff, I think that last night you saw the players with a look on their face like, just get us to the All-Star break. We're tired. We don't have anything else left to give. I think veterans like Drummond are looking around being like, yeah, I just want to get to the All-Star break. Barlow, I don't know what to do with Barlow. Barlow is a fascinating case of when you look at a young player and you see what he's capable of, and then he's unable to replicate that again. It almost reminds me of like in baseball, a pitcher who throws like a no-hitter or a perfect game, and then he never is able to replicate anything close to that together. It's like, baseball history is full of guys like Dallas Braden and Armando Galarraga who had these amazing one game, right? Or in Phillies lore, Michael Lorenzen, right? With his no-hitter. You have these guys who have this one game, this one moment where they're at the apex of their ability, and then they're never able to replicate it again. And I'm not saying that Dominic Barlow is that, but man, how do you go from a guy who has an historic night to basically being a has-been? It's just such a strange situation. Whitehorse RV text board is 609-403-0973. Monday, Marcus chimes in. He says, I have seen this nightmare before. The Sixers have no one who is able to back up Joel Embiid when he's out. They do not have shooting consistency when passes are made. They had McCain. The Knicks, meanwhile, picked up Jose Alvarado, and he hit 8 threes last night. And then he goes on to say that maybe things will get better when PG comes back. Monday, Marcus, I don't know if it's going to get better when PG comes back. I can't depend on that. I need these guys to play professionals. I need them to get their face out of this, off the ground. Pull up your pants, grow up, be a man, and go out there and play better. And if you're not able to do it, then if I'm Josh Harris and his buddy Bob Myers, I got to consider cleaning house. Not in terms of the roster, but in terms of the coaching staff and the front office. You're right. The Knicks picked up a guy in Jose Alvarado who would have been a great addition for the Sixers. You do not have a legitimate backup point guard. Jose Alvarado could have been the guy taking those minutes to give Maxey and Edgecombe a rest, to replace McCain. The Embiid backup issue, I think, is complicated because you were hoping that Drummond could be that guy, and he's unable to do it consistently. He's just getting too old at this point. I like Adem Bona a lot. I think Bona is a phenomenal young player. But I'm confused if Nick Nurse knows what to do with him. Because it feels like there should be situations where Bona should be getting minutes. Charles Bassey got into the game last night for the first time in a long time with the 76ers. You need rebounding. You need rim protection. You need athletes hitting the glass. And you've had him sit on the bench for how long? In the game last night, Adem Bona played 23 minutes. He had 5 rebounds. Now, he also had 2 turnovers, but he had 2 steals. He gave you something. So why are there certain games where we never see him play? Speaking of Bassey, he gets in the game for 5 minutes last night. 5 minutes! You lose a game by 49, and the backup of your backup big man gets 5 minutes? What are we doing? By the way, in those 5 minutes, he had a block. So, this is where I think the Nick Nurse stuff from Ray and EHC and others come in, which is, what are we doing? if we have the guys who could maybe get more playing time, you're not giving it to them, what are we doing? Daryl Morey, this team had needs. There was a specific need that needed to be addressed, and you didn't address it. You just turned around and said this.
Because we're playing well, we were trying to upgrade the team and add to the team now. That was goal number one. Obviously, no deal materialized, including using the picks we got from the Jared deal. That's why we did that move a little early. We're trying to reuse those draft picks to add now. We do feel like this deal sets us up better in the future, but we understand that we were looking to add now, and nothing materialized.
I mean, good grief, Daryl. What is wrong with you? We'll check back on the text board just a minute. Can we come back? 609-403-0973. Again, the White Horse RV text board, White Horse RV Center in Williamstown and Galloway. Your RV adventure starts here at White Horse RV. 609-403-0973. We'll check in on the text board. Plus, coming up, the latest rumors, speculation with the Philadelphia Eagles. You gotta love when a network like ESPN creates a new layer of conversation for the rest of us. Plus, still to come, Nick Earnshaw joins the show for Knicks Nuggets at 3 p.m. Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast with Andrew the Checo, who is Chris Cooper, the new offensive line coach. We'll dig into who Jeff Stoutland's replacement is coming up at 4 p.m. And we'll get Austin Krell's perspective on the 76ers. Sixers reporter for Sports Illustrated, Austin Krell, joins us at 5 p.m. And, of course, your text in the White Horse RV text board at 609-403-0973. Josh Hennig, filling in for Mike Gill on a Thursday edition of the Sports Bash on 973 ESPN FM. Streaming live on YouTube at 973 ESPN. And don't forget the 973 ESPN mobile app, powered by First Bank of Seattle City.
It's the Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
Keeping the fans entertained and happy.
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. It's the Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
Do I have everybody's attention now?
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
Well, we continue to talk to clubs about that, and that's our focus prior to the start of spring training. So that's something that we'll continue to work on this week.
Is that something that you hope to have resolved this week?
Hopefully, yes.
Hey, Dave, just to clarify, if Nick is not traded or released by the time position players are scheduled to report, will he be in camp?
Well, at this point, we're doing everything we can to make a move by that time period. So I'll leave it at that right now.
That was Dave Dombrowski earlier this week. Approximately 48 hours after he said that, the Philadelphia Phillies have finally done the deed. The Philadelphia Phillies have officially announced they are releasing Nick Castellanos. The saga is finally over. The drama is finally done. We are finally... the national nightmare or Philadelphia sports nightmare is over. Listen, Nick Castellanos needed to be unloaded sooner than he was. I think the Phillies were genuinely trying to figure out if there was a way to maybe unload him to save money. That's what it was really about. They were trying to see if they could save money on the luxury tax. Once they realized that no one was going to help them, they said, never mind. In fact, there was a report that came out yesterday from the Athletics' Matt Gelb that said that they had told Castellanos to stay home. Don't come to camp. And now they're paying him $20 million to go away. Or as my grandmother used to say, don't go away mad, just go away. Nick Castellanos, I'm seeing it now, posted and is there anything more? Is there anything more Castellanos than writing out a written letter and then posting the written letter on social media? Now, I'm going to read this the best I can. I'm going to preface this by saying that I don't know why Nick Castellanos has posted this letter on an angle. Okay. I will share it if you're watching on YouTube and X. I'll put it up there at 973 ESPN on YouTube, at Josh Hennig on X. So we're going to put this up on the screen so everybody can see what I am reading right now. It is titled Miami Incident. According to Nick Castellanos, and I'm quoting, and I'm going to give you a little commentary as this goes along, okay? Because this is kind of a long letter. But apparently Nick Castellanos has decided that the moment he got released was the moment he was going to spill the beans on what happened between him and Rob Thompson. I mean, goodness gracious. Here we go. Miami Incident, it's titled. Quote, okay, apparently I need to address the Miami incident, as one of my friends on the team has informed me this is an article waiting to come out without my consent or comments about this situation. So I am going to just share it myself. So, number one, Nick Castellanos is claiming that he is doing a preemptive strike. Okay? That he is basically preemptive striking this situation. Now, I'm going to assume that the article that is being referenced is probably going to be in The Athletic or in the Philadelphia Inquirer, because those were the two media outlets that most closely covered the Castellanos incident in Miami without any bias, unlike some other platforms out there that keep trying to make Castellanos look like he's a victim. I go on to read Castellanos' statement. As a veteran of the game of baseball, there are rules, and I broke one in Miami. After being taken out of a close ball game in front of my friends and family, I brought a Presidente into the dugout. I then sat right next to Rob, I guess it's Rob Thompson, and let him know that too much slack in some areas and the tight off restrictions in others are not conducive to us winning. So to summarize, and again, I feel like I need a decoder ring for this, but I'm doing my best here. So basically, Castellanos is claiming that he violated a rule, brought a beer into the dugout, decided to sit next to Rob Thompson, and then lecture him. He goes on to say, shout out to my teammates, and I don't know who this person is, for taking the beer out of my hands before I could take a sip. I appreciate you guys. He goes on to say, after the game, I went into the office with Dave and Rob. We aired out our differences, and the conversation ended with me apologizing for letting my emotions get the best of me. I would like to know. Okay, so it goes to the next page. So let's summarize that part. So he basically says that his teammates took the beer out of his hand so he could not actually violate the rule of drinking alcohol in the dugout of a baseball game. He explains then that him and Rob Thompson went into a separate room with Dave Dombrowski. And again, I am reading this as is and trying to understand it. I think he's trying to say that I would like everybody to know that I was ready for the season, I guess is what he's trying to say at the end here. All right, so let's go to page 2. All right, Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill. Nick Castellanos released by the Philadelphia Phillies today. And in response, Nick Castellanos has decided to put out a handwritten letter because apparently in today's world, that's the way to put out a statement. Don't read the letter to everybody so you can play the audio for 97.3 ESPN's audience. Written letter. Okay, so if I'm reading this correctly, what he is saying is, because I continue on the next page, I would like to note that I was ready to share the details of the incident in its entirety to the media the next day. But I was instructed not to by management. So he's claiming that he was willing to tell everybody what happened, but he was told to not reveal it to anybody. He goes on to say, the punishment I received for my actions was the benching the following day. Castellanos wraps up this handwritten letter that he posted on his Instagram saying, I love this game. I love being a teammate, and I am addicted to winning. I will learn from this. And that's all it says. So, in summary, Nick Castellanos, who was released today by the Philadelphia Phillies. I am Josh Hennig, filling in for Mike Gill on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. So, in summary, instead of posting a goodbye, instead of posting a farewell, instead of a it's been real Philadelphia, apparently Castellanos decided that now is the time to reveal to the world what happened that day. Now, a couple things I do want to say. Number one, for as much as I have criticized Nick Castellanos, I got to give the guy a ton of credit for taking responsibility and saying it is my fault for saying that I appreciate my teammates for saving me from myself. And also give him credit for saying, listen, the Phillies asked me to not air out dirty laundry to the public. And that I listened to them and I obliged their request. So for as critical as someone like myself has been here on 97.3 ESPN, Josh Hennig hanging out with you on a Thursday afternoon, filling for Mike Gill on the Sports Bash, Castellanos does deserve credit for taking responsibility and telling everybody what happened. Now, the problem is that it has been previously described that what Castellanos said was completely and utterly uncalled for. And to the point where the typically mild-mannered Rob Thompson got very, very angry. So that's why I am going to read the one part again where he says, I sat right next to Rob and let him know that too much slack in some areas and the tight off restrictions in others are not conducive to us winning. So I'm going to interpret this as Nick Castellanos may think that the airing of differences and the bringing of the beer might have been the reason. And even though he claims he apologized for letting my emotions get the best of me, telling your boss how to do his job in a public setting is just another example of Nick Castellanos' immaturity. Now, I'll get to some of your text on the Whitehorse RV text board at 609-403-0973. Again, we're reading the statement from Nick Castellanos as he was released today by the Phillies. The other part of the immaturity and the reason why Castellanos is not here is the end of this article. Sorry, the end of this article. This handwritten note, which, by the way, I will also compliment Nick Castellanos and say, as someone myself who has not great handwriting, this is actually not bad. This is actually solid handwriting. Maybe he's just a handwriter. Although I will say that it does not look like a clicky pen. I'm a big fan of the click pen, so it looks like a click pen there. So you get credit for that too. But I digress. The end where Castellanos says, I love this game. I love being a teammate. And I am addicted to winning. I will learn from this. That sounds great for a t-shirt. That sounds great for a motivational speech. But boy, this whole thing with there's more to this. Oh my goodness. But wait, there's more. There's another slide. Okay, so he has one slide about the Miami incident. Oh, we thought we were getting something, folks. I got to read the rest of this. All right, we got more. He has a part addressed just to Philadelphia. Oh, boy. All right, hold on. If you're watching on YouTube and X, I'll put this up on the screen so everybody can try to read along. Now, this one is actually vertical. This one is actually straight up and down. So this should be easier for me to read. So let me pop this up on the stream. Again, if you're watching on YouTube at 973 ESPN or on X at Josh Hennig. He says, Philadelphia. John, thank you for what you have provided my family with. I guess he means John Middleton. Dave, thank you for the opportunity. Dave Dombrowski. Staff, Philly staff. Thank you for helping me prepare. I don't know what this I don't know what this PA or DACO means, but he says 414 is just as much yours as it is mine. You are the man. Oh, Paco. He says 414 is just as much yours as it is mine. You are the man in any room you walk in, the famous Paco. My teammates, I love you guys. Te quiero mucho, which means very much, basically. Playing with you all will be a core memory for the rest of my life. To the people of the city of Philadelphia, thank you for showing up the past 4 years, applauding or booing. You were there. Remember, the sharp attention and powerful passion you leave for your sports teams are not married to the lens of media companies that cover them. The color of your collective soul is your own to point together. Okay, so that's pretty cool. He gives a shout out to pretty much everybody here. You know, the fans, the city. Says the media doesn't interpret them very well. It's a pretty cool thing by him. By the way, there's more pages. By the way, BC and Bowers Beach, thank you for pointing out. Could someone type this up for Castellanos? Or could someone film this? I would love to play the audio. I'd love to hear this in his own words. And then put like dramatic music behind it. That would have been fun. All right. Instead, I'm in the studio by myself trying to put this on line. Okay, here we go. He says, at the end of the thank you note, he says, above all, thank you for embracing Liam the way you did, his son Liam. For that, I can never repay. To all who are reading, I wish you strong health and peace of mind. He signs it, Nicholas. And he has a picture of a house with a chimney, I guess, coming out of the top. So there you go. Castellanos went on to thank everybody in Philadelphia, from Dave Dombrowski to John Middleton to the Phillies staff to Paco. No thanks to Rob Thompson, by the way. So that's pretty on par for him. Thanked his teammates. Thanked the city of Philadelphia for their passion. So there you go. Nick Castellanos, the day he is released, decided to write a 4-page goodbye note. I mean, is there anything more Nick Castellanos than that? I'm sure we're going to get more text about this coming up. We'll get to them on the other side. The Whitehorse RV text board. Nick Castellanos is releases a 4-page written by hand goodbye and his side of the story about the incident in Miami last year. I'm sure Nick's Nuggets going to have a lot to say about this coming up in about 10 minutes here on the Sports Bash. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill on a Thursday on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle City. And we are streaming live on YouTube at 97.3 ESPN and on X at Josh Hennig.
You're listening to the Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
And if you're not down with that, we got 2 words for you.
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. It's the Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
And I am the voice of the voiceless.
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
All right, Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill. 2 o'clock hour wrapping up. A couple texts coming in the Whitehorse RV text board at 609-403-0970. Robbie Little Egg Harbor says, Nick had to go. I think the Phillies tried to trade him. Nick needs to grow up. There are a lot of people that want to play pro baseball. Yeah, you're right. The maturity thing has been a complaint of mine for a while. Jim in Williamstown says, Nick Castellanos ain't the manager. Why doesn't he concentrate on hitting? What a moron, says Jim in Williamstown. Hey, man, I've been complaining about Castellanos for a long time. The maturity, the bad attitude, his lack of focus. Now he's gone. As BC and Bowers Beach said on the Whitehorse RV text board, he said, you would think with the Phillies paying him $20 million, he could get someone to afford to type it up for him. Knicks Nuggets coming up next on 97.3 ESPN.
Home of the Sports Bash with Mike Gill, 97.3 ESPN, WENJ, WENJ HD, Millville, Atlantic City.
Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill here on 97.3 ESPN. 3 o'clock hour of the Sports Bash being brought to you by Broadlease Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. Broadlease is your trusted source for heating and plumbing services, along with installation for generations. Call them at 609-390-3907. Online at broadlease.net. I think there's never been a day where Nick Earnshaw was more happy to be joining us for an early edition of the Nuggets, because I don't know what's more crazy. The fact that the Phillies decided at Thursday afternoon around 2:25 to do this move, Nick, or is it the fact that Nick Castellanos' handwritten 4-page letter on Instagram? I love what BC and Bowers Beach said, Nick, because he said, why couldn't Nick, with his $20 million, have hired somebody to post and write it for him or make a video or something? Like, there's nothing more. This is the most appropriate way for this divorce to happen.
You know, as Zoomers say, he was aura farming. You know, had to make it mystical, had to do it the Nick Castellanos way, write the handwritten note.
Listen, I would have played dramatic music behind it if he would have actually, like, put himself on a camera, you know, and, like, talk to the camera and like read from the script. Like, we could have put like dramatic music behind it. Like, he could have really ramped it up, but he didn't. No, he put the handwritten note, like, this is my goodbye. He was sending it to the ex-girlfriend. I'm sorry for the Miami incident. You know, we wanted to have some beer in the clubhouse, and here we are. In the dugout. Not the clubhouse, the dugout. Yeah, I should stay corrected. The dugout during the game. Crazy. Wow. Where do we even begin, Josh? Where do we even start here? The fact that it took this long for the Phillies to make a move on Castellanos, they overplayed their hand by signing his replacement, etc. So they took themselves out of getting anything, to say the least, for him. The fact they waited till spring training started is absolutely insane as well. The fact they told him, don't come to spring training, and then we're either going to trade or release him, put that out into the ether. Ridiculous. I mean, just this whole situation was just handled so poorly by all sides. Nick Castellanos obviously going back to Miami, the whole incident with bringing the brew like it was beer league softball on Sunday into the into the dugout. Starts there. He's making how much money? $20 million they're going to have to eat here. Right. And they went an entire offseason, got to spring training, and then cut him. What was the point of that? You overplayed your hand by signing Garcia pretty early on. It was that in December. And then you just let this thing marinate. You know, like, what? You didn't make any move. You knew you weren't going to get anything for him. Nobody wanted him. Clubs around the league had heard about the incident in Miami. We knew they were going to cut him anyway. So why even try? You weren't going to find a trade partner. I have a hard time believing that they were up to the last second, just couldn't get a deal done. No, they could get a deal on for a long time, Josh. So Dave Dombrowski apparently literally just spoke to the media minutes ago. Yes. So I have not heard this. So I will hear this with the rest of the audience on 97.3 ESPN as a part of our Knicks Nuggets segment, because conveniently Dave Dombrowski was available with a half hour after they released Castellanos. Like, you can't make this stuff up. This is starting to turn into soap opera right here. So here is the all-knowing, all-powerful Dave Dombrowski.
Dave, you have some news today?
Well, yes. I mean, we've officially released the contract of Nick Castellanos from the organization today. We've spent a long time trying to make a trade. When I say that, trying to move this contract for a minimum return from a dollar perspective and player perspective, but it just hasn't worked out. And at some point, you just have to say, well, this isn't going to work. We have felt that we need to get a change of scenery for Nick. wish him nothing but the best. He did a lot of good things for our organization. He was here for 4 years. We won every year he was here. Got a lot of big hits for us, a lot of big hits in the postseason. So wish him nothing but the best, except, of course, when he's playing the Phillies. And, yeah, so that was the news for today.
All right, a couple of things. First of all, number one, if you are a media professional, get a unidirectional microphone. Enough of you idiots using omnidirectional microphones, okay? I've been doing this for a long time. There is literally a setting on these microphones so you're not picking up 20-mile-an-hour winds while Dave Dombrowski is talking. That's number one. I'm straining to hear Dombrowski talk. Number two, he said nothing of relevance, Nick. I mean, the man literally got up there and was like, well, we were going to do this and we were trying to save money, but it didn't work out. And we wish Nick the best. And yeah, that's the news today. And it's like, all right, Dave, why don't you go back into your ivory tower and go back to telling us how we're all stupid because you're, God's gift to baseball.
It was a fantastic rant by you right there. I very much thoroughly enjoyed that. The best part of it was the best part to me was we released the contract of Nick Castellanos.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, we released the contract of Nick Castellanos. I love it. He just said it so plainly in his slick back hair. And I mean, they knew they weren't going to get anything for him. It didn't come up to today to have to do this. They could have did this a week ago. They could have did this before spring training happened. Like, there's just so many things wrong with this whole situation with Nick Castellanos. We knew he stunk, okay, all year. He chases everything out of the zone. We know he's the most aggressive swinger in all of baseball. He's going to chase everything. Like, come on, man. We knew this wasn't going to happen. They knew they weren't going to get anything for him. He even said it right
come
there.
on, man. That was good.
I mean, jeez. It's ridiculous. And
I got more audio for you, by the way.
Oh,
I know there's supposed to be Knicks Nuggets, but
no, let's go to Dombrowski's Donuts. Let's go.
Yeah, well, donut, as Billy Schwein
Go
would
eat a
say.
donut.
So apparently he was asked about the Miami incident, as Nick Castellanos wrote about in his letter, Nick. Here is more from Dave Dombrowski.
Brought a beer into the dugout. I guess he said he did not drink from it. But was that something that tipped the scales in this case? Was that why he was benched?
Well, that was 7 months ago, so it was a long time ago. We spoke about it at the time. We addressed it at the time. Rob Thompson and I did with Nick. I was surprised. I mean, I was there at the game, and I watched everything from where I was sitting, and I was surprised that a lot of people didn't see what was taking place at the time. So I watched what took place. Of course, was advised. Now, I'm not in the dugout, so I wasn't 100%.
So really quick, just to give a little recap for those who are having trouble hearing. So Dombrowski basically says that what happened was 7 months ago. When it happened, he was surprised about what happened because he saw it all play out from his vantage point, and that it was very surprising when it happened. Here's more.
% sure every step of the way, but that contributed by all means why he was suspended for that game or taken out of the lineup for that game, the bench for the game. But it was a situation that wasn't the final or determining factor, because if that was, we would have done that at that particular time. So
just for the record.
So he basically explains that, they didn't release Castellanos now because of what happened 7 months ago, which, no duh, Dave. By the way, there's more. There's more here. By the way, shout out to Tim Kelly of On Pattinson for being the only person to get this up online.
Because he put out a statement. Was that during the game or was that after the game when he brought a beer and sat next to Rob?
Well, I'm going to let others speak to that. I think that was 7 months ago.
Okay, yeah, you had to ask because he put it out.
Well, I'm sure what he wrote, then you probably would need to ask him about that. But it was a long time ago. But if that's what he said, that he brought it in the dugout during the game, then I would say that would be accurate.
Well, no, I don't think.
So basically, Dave Dombrowski says that he doesn't want to actually say what happened, saying if Castellanos says it happened, then he guessed it did happen. And then the final part here from Dombrowski.
He specified it was during the game. That's why I was asking.
Didn't you sure? I thought it said it was during the game.
Okay, I didn't.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it said during the game.
Okay.
Yeah, it specifically.
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay, so he confirms that the beer thing happened during the game and it was not after the game. So after being pressed a little bit by the erstwhile Philly sports media, who are apparently in the greatest wind tunnel in Florida for this impromptu presser, the second impromptu presser of the Phillies this week that nobody knew about until it happened. So basically Dombrowski doesn't want to admit it, but he confirms that basically what Castellanos said happened, Nick.
Okay, there's a lot there.
There is a lot.
He knew he was going to get asked about the Miami thing. I mean, come on. Like, before he's going to go speak to the media, you don't think he knew that Castellanos posted on his Instagram page? I mean, come on.
I mean,
if he doesn't, that's malpractice.
Right, that's a bad job by the PR team.
But I listen, he didn't get released because of the Miami thing. Did that play into it? Sure. But he didn't produce. The whole crux to this thing is that Nick Castellanos did not produce throughout an entirety of a season. Now, did he come up with some big hits in playoff moments? Sure. I'll give him that. This definitely played a factor, but he did not produce to the level of contract he was being paid. Okay? He was making $20 million a year. He was not performing like a $20 million a year player. He was striking out a lot. He played an awful right field. And this is what happens, right? Like the Phillies needed to improve, and they wanted to find a way to get their young players up in Justin Crawford, and now they replace him with Adolis Garcia, who has had offensive success in the past. You're hoping you can get that out of him. It's a hope, but you hope you can get that out of him this year. But he's also a much better defender. And then, you add on the shenanigans on top of it. It's like, all right, we have to make a move here. And the fact they had to release him is because he had no value around the league. Nobody wants a guy who's going to hit barely over 200, not get on base, strike out a lot, and does not play a good right field. Nobody wants to give up anything for it. They don't want to give up a low A reliever for a player like that. And then on top of it, you add the beer incident. Like, he can apologize all he wants. Is he going to do something else? Is he going to be annoying in the clubhouse? Like, I'm glad he took ownership for it, but, who knows what's going to happen going forward. So this needed to happen. They needed to release him. Should it have taken this long? No. That's where I think the Phillies are at fault. I mean, it was ridiculous that they still had him on the roster. They overplayed their hand. They thought they could still get some value for him. Even when they signed his replacement, everyone knew he wasn't going to be on the Phillies anymore, and you couldn't get anything of value for him, so you're going to have to eat $20 million, and that's on Dave Dombrowski. So everyone at this situation has some blame.
I still can't get over the fact that Dombrowski, for whatever reason, just finds it completely. Just come out and say it, Dave. Yeah, it happened. Like, why do we need the reporters? Why can't it
beat around the bush?
Like, why do we need the reporters to ask you 20 ways from Sunday for you just to be like, yes, it happened?
Yeah, like he pretended he didn't know what happened. He literally, in that statement, said,
well,
that
first, remember,
he sold it.
Right. He says it happened 7 months ago.
Yes.
Then he says, well, I saw it clear as day what happened. I was surprised nobody else saw it. Then he says, but I'm not going to get into what happened. I'll let other people explain it. Then the reporter pipes up and says, well, Nick says it happened.
Yeah.
And Dave has, and for those who don't see the video, Dave has a look on his face like he didn't know that Nick Castellanos put this thing out on social media. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, I don't know if did they try? There's no way the Phillies let Dombrowski go out there without telling him. So, was Dave not paying attention? Was did the army of Phillies media people try to explain it to him, and Dombrowski was like, yeah, whatever. They're not going to ask me about that. And then boom, they asked him.
Well, didn't he in the incident letter, didn't he say that Dave and Rob had met with him after the game? Wasn't that in the letter?
So in the letter, it says that they basically let me pull up the exact Castellanos wording, but the way I remember him saying was that they basically aired out the differences and he apologized.
Yes, I have it right here in front of me. He said, after the game, I went into the office with Dave and Rob. We aired out our differences, and the conversation ended with me apologizing for letting my emotions get the best of me. Come on, Dave. Really? I mean, don't act like you don't know.
The second person he says thank you to in the goodbye letter was Dombrowski.
Yeah. I mean, dude, that was bad. I for the listening audience, if you're just tuning in, we're discussing the Dave Dombrowski, impromptu presser in the windiest part of Clearwater.
Right.
Reaction to the Nick Castellanos release of his contract today. That's how he started. He said they released the contract of Nick Castellanos. Not that they released Nick Castellanos, the human. Nope. They released the contract of Nick Castellanos. Very interesting wording there. But then, he pretends he knows what happened, and then he pretends he doesn't know what happened. So, he's talking out of both sides of his mouth. From what I'm hearing, am I crazy? Is that what I'm hearing? Is that what the texters hearing? 609-430-0973. That's what I heard. He's talking out of both sides of his mouth. Yeah, I actually knew what happened. I actually don't know what happened. So I don't get it.
You're not crazy. He literally is just it's almost as if, as I just said before, Nick, the media people tried to prepare him. He didn't want to listen. And now he's out there just kind of flailing in the wind, like one of those things, like the flailing, wind people in the wind at the car dealerships, going out of business sale, one of those things.
Yeah.
Because it is windy down there. Yeah.
It is.
If you didn't hear it the first time or the second or the third time.
It's sad because, Castellanos did have some really cool moments for the Phillies. 23 against Atlanta. We'll always remember that. He had some very cool moments. The Liam stuff was fantastic. He thanked the fans for the way we, embraced Liam Castellanos and, gave him a good time around the ballpark and, him high-fiving him after a home run or something along those lines. That was pretty cool. But overall, this whole situation should not have gotten to February 12th. It shouldn't have gotten here. There's no reason that he should have still been on the roster as spring training was starting, as guys were arriving in Clearwater. That was malpractice by the Phillies. That was wrong.
How about the report last night from Matt Gelb and the Athletic saying that they had to tell Castellanos to stay home?
Yeah.
What is going on? First of all, Nick, don't you know they're trying to get rid of you? Why would you even show up to spring training?
Well, that was my point on Nuggets earlier in the week. Remember, Mike and I were talking about this. What is he just going to show up, cause a little chaos? How is he still here? They've made it clear he's not coming back. Somehow, some way, whether they find a trade or whatever they do, he's not coming back. So, if you're Nick Castellanos, he technically could have just showed up. He could have technically showed up. Even against the Phillies' wishes, he could have showed up. This is how much of a mess this is. How do you mishandle this whole entire situation? You had months to rectify this, and you didn't. It's frustrating. This has been a frustrating offseason if you're a Phillies fan. And we said it during the year. We talked about it all the time. Hanging with Hennig, locker room, sports bash, Nuggets. It doesn't matter. We talked about it all. Frank's mailbag. Kurz, I'm sure, talked about it. And he's joining us with the Phillies now. If they didn't win last year, they had a lot of decisions to make, and it was a massive offseason. And nothing really changed. And everything kind of stayed the same. And they mishandled multiple situations. Not just Castellanos. The Bichette one, too. And the Real Muto one. They mishandled a lot of stuff here in the offseason.
But this remember,
this is the cherry on top.
Just remember, Dave Dombrowski is God's gift to baseball. The man knows all. He understands all. He knows more than you. He knows more than your mom. He knows more than everybody. He understands. Nick, let me tell you about what happened in 2006 with the Tigers. He loves to do that. I can't stand it when he does that. So that's what happened 20 years ago, bro.
Now, I will ask this. How excited can you be now after all this happening for the Philly season? Seriously, it feels like there's dysfunction, to say the least.
See, I think that this is going to pass. I really do, because I don't know if you saw the news last night and today about how the Phillies have gone out of their way to place the young players' lockers next to the veteran lockers, right? So Aiden Miller is basically apparently in between Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber. And then you have, I think Romuto is next to Crawford. And they have Wheeler and Nola next to, what's his name? Painter.
Yes.
So it's like, I think the Phillies understood that, you know what? We just need to be done. We need to cut the cord. We're trying to do a good thing. We're trying to move in the right direction. We need to be done with this.
Yeah, they could have gotten it done a lot earlier. That's the problem. They could have gotten it done a lot earlier. They knew they were getting nothing for Nick Castellanos. So it is what it is. I did say this because I saw this come out like right after the announcement was made. John Heyman put out a tweet regarding Castellanos, who his next club could be. He put, quote, Nick Castellanos is being released by the Phillies. Potential fits may include Padres, Jays, A's, Rangers, Reds. Uncertain where interest lies.
Well,
John
the Blue Jays really quick are very interesting because they just lost Santander for a few months, it looks like. So they need a DH. So I could totally see a scenario where Toronto calls Nick and says, look, can you come up here? We'll make you the DH until further notice, and we'll figure it out from there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be fascinating because, I mean, the guy hit 30 home runs one day. I mean, you could sell a fan base on that. Like if you're the A's, right? He's he's had success in the past. He had those couple of home runs in 2023 against the Atlanta Braves with the Phillies. He was dominant in that series. Maybe we can get a little bit of that. And it's kind of what the Phillies are saying about Adolis Garcia, right? Like that's the way we've talked ourselves into Adolis Garcia.
But that's the other side of the coin, which is Garcia has a great reputation as a locker room guy. He's very well known for being a great locker room guy, a guy who likes to have fun with his teammates. Like, he's not this loner, aloof, immature whack-a-mole that Nick Castellanos is. So, to me, I think the Phillies... Listen, Mike Gill brought up yesterday here on the Sports Bash. Josh Hennig filling for Mike Gill on a Thursday on 97.3 ESPN. Knicks Nuggets a little bit earlier in the show with Nick Earnshaw. Mike said yesterday that they brought in Garcia for the distinct reason to replace Castellanos. That's when they should have gotten rid of Castellanos. They should have waited until February 12th.
They could have released him weeks ago.
Months ago. Sure.
Whatever. Just they could have done it. They weren't getting anything for him. I don't know why they thought they were going to get a trade. What were you going to get for him? Nothing.
I
will. This question. Go ahead. I'll let you finish.
Really
I have one more question.
I did listen to Ruben Amaro Jr. talking about this on the Phillies podcast.
Yeah.
Where he explained that the trade wasn't about getting something for Castellanos.
No.
It was about lowering the tax bill.
Correct.
Because apparently if you would have traded him, you would have saved the equivalent of $4 to $8 million on the luxury tax.
But teams know that. Teams know that.
Well, they know that, but if you are, I think, and again, I'm trying to get into the mind of a pious, pompous, old man in Dave Dombrowski, okay? I think the Phillies' theory is that there would be more of a demand for Castellanos' services, and they were completely wrong.
Yeah, and the premise there is wrong. Like there's no demand for Nick Castellanos, and I laid it out just a couple minutes ago. The locker room stuff. He doesn't get on base. He strikes out a lot. He doesn't play a good right field. I mean, there's no demand for that. Like nobody wants that. And I just had another thought pop into my mind. Wasn't it before? Didn't Rob Thompson say that Castellanos made an inappropriate comment to him when the whole Miami incident happened?
Yes.
It feels a little bit more than just bringing a beer into the dugout.
Well, again, that's what I said before you came on, Nick. I don't think the suspension was about the beer because Castellanos even explains in the letter, my teammates got the beer away from me before I could drink it. So to me, I think it was about the whole, I sat down next to Rob. Remember, he calls him Rob in the letter. And he says, I was explaining to him. It was almost like, as one of the texters chimed in the White Horse RV text board at 609-403-0973. I try and find who it was. One of the texters said that, it was Jim in Williamstown. Basically said that, Nick isn't the manager. He needs to concentrate on hitting. And it was like Castellanos trying to tell Rob Thompson how to do his job. And what's crazy is that, did you see the Whit Merrifield thing?
Yes, I did.
Like, why does everyone on planet Earth have good things to say about Rob Thompson except for one man?
One guy.
One guy.
One guy.
One guy doesn't like him. And it's very strange that one guy, it lacks the mental acuity, the social awareness to be like, wow, why am I the only guy who doesn't like him?
It's only me.
It's only me. Maybe I'm the problem.
Yeah, it's you. What's the Taylor Swift song? Hi, it's me. It's me. I'm the problem.
I'm the problem.
You should be listening to that all the way to his next destination. All right, Nick, you were the problem, buddy. I'm sorry. But hey, it is he's now no longer a Philly. We knew this was coming. It should have happened a long time ago. Buddy, maybe we'll go play beer league softball and have a few brews in the spring here.
He'll probably be a Blue Jay. I think he's going to be a Blue Jay. I really do.
Up there in Canada. He'll have a few brews in that dugout. How about that?
He'll have some, what is that, Labatt up there?
Yeah.
Well, Nick, I know we got to let you go, but we can get to the Sixers tomorrow, right?
Yeah, I got plenty to say. That was unbelievable last night. Oh, well.
Well, by the way, shout out to Nick. You're doing a little bit of a yeoman's assist helping me with some of the stuff as I'm riding solo here in the studio. So, Nick, remote producing for the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Thanks, Nick. Appreciate you, man.
No problem, Josh. I'll talk to you, man.
Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. All right, we got a ton of text to get to on the text board. The Whitehorse RV text board, 609-403-0973. I got Stephen Ventnor, Jake in Egg Harbor City, and more. Your text coming up on the other side here on the Sports Bash. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill on a Thursday edition on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle City, and streaming live on YouTube at 97.3 ESPN and on X. More about Nick Castellanos' drama on the other side with you guys on the Whitehorse RV text board here on 97.3 ESPN.
You're listening to the Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
Never thought this radio stunt would catch on so big.
On 97.3 ESPN.
Josh Hennig back here in the Ocean Casino Resort Studios, filling in for Mike Gill. 97.3 ESPN FM, 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle City. Streaming live on YouTube at 97.3 ESPN and on X. Don't forget the 3 o'clock hour being brought to you by Broadlease Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. Broadlease is your trusted source for heating and plumbing service installation for generations. Call them at 609-390-3907 or online at broadlease.net. Again, the breaking news that we've been hitting on throughout the last hour plus of the Sports Bash here on 97.3 ESPN. Nick Castellanos is released and then proceeds to post 4 pages of handwritten letter describing his thanking the Phillies organization, thanking the fans, giving his side of the Miami incident, as he calls it, in the most Nick Castellanos way possible. As the Nick Castellanos drama is finally coming to an end. Back to the text board on the Whitehorse RV text board at 609-403-0973. A bunch of texts coming in throughout me and Nick Earnshaw's Nuggets discussion. Don't forget, we'll get back into the football forward with Andrew the Checo, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. And we'll get back to the NBA with Austin Krell coming up at 5 p.m. But right now, we'll continue with the Phillies conversation. Steve chimed in from Ventnor on the text board, on the Whitehorse RV Center text board at 609-403-0973. He says the Phillies front office should have never said a thing publicly about Castellanos. They played their cards wrong. A salesman would have sold Cassie as a gamer with a clean injury history, a right-handed bat on the starved market, motivated in a contract year. Dombrowski has lost some luster, in my opinion. They should have traded for a guy like Luis Robert or one of these other guys to replace Castellanos. That's from Steve and Ventnor. Well, a couple things there. One, I totally agree about the part that they completely mishandled the situation. You're right. The presentation was wrong. The handling was wrong. They could have handled everything differently, from the trade, everything. The problem with the Castellanos situation is that Nick didn't do himself any favors either, because Castellanos was the one who went to the media and aired out his grievances. So if you're the Phillies, you're looking around like, well, we can't say that he's not a malcontent because he's publicly come out and said he is a malcontent. So it was in some ways a no-win situation. But Steve is right. They should have handled it completely differently. Now, to your point about the trades, I understand that there are a lot of names that have been circulated out there. I know Luis Robert was traded to the Mets and so on and so forth. But I do believe that Adolis Garcia is the right replacement. Excuse me. Garcia is a guy who has similar production in terms of power than Castellanos, but a much higher upside than Castellanos. As a much better defensive player as well. I think that Garcia is better than a Luis Robert. He's better than a Joe Adell in terms of all-around ball player. Now, if you want to say that Garcia had a bad year in Texas, sure, he did. But I don't think it changes the fact that he is, in the most literal sense, an upgrade over Nick Castellanos. So I don't want to ignore that. Jake in Egg Harbor City chimes in on the text board at 609-403-0973. He says, Nick Castellanos changed his name to Nick Buttermaker. He might get a job as a coach somewhere. Well, Jake, and I understand what you're saying. The reporting this morning was that one of the teams that would be interested in Castellanos, and John Heyman confirmed that report, is the Blue Jays, because they lost Anthony Santander for the next few months. So he could certainly be a guy that, for all intents and purposes, Castellanos, he could end up in Toronto. I've seen the Reds rumors before that Heyman put out there. I just don't see it, but we'll see. Anonymous texter chimed in at 609-403-0973 on the White Horse RV text board. Says, where were we before Dave Dombrowski? Did we have Matt Klentak? We should be thankful for what we have. Well, anonymous texter, it's not that I'm not grateful, but I'm not going to treat Dombrowski like he's infallible. See, this is where, it's this all or nothing reality simulation that we live in now because of social media and because of the modern political environment. Two things can be simultaneously true, but most of society doesn't know how to accept that or realize that or absorb that, because most people live in echo chambers on social media. And the problem is that is Dave Dombrowski a upgrade over the Matt Klentak and Andy MacPhail era? Absolutely. But is he infallible? No. Does he get things wrong? Yes. Should we be allowed to criticize them? Yes. Kind of reminds me of the Jack Nicklaus scene where he's nodding yes maniacally. Like that's how I feel about Dave Dombrowski. All the above. More text coming on the White Horse RV text board at 609-403-0973. I don't, the person didn't leave their name, but I do get the joke about the wind tunnel. Yeah. Listen, and that was me, more so me verbalizing some frustration. For those who don't know, I've actually worked in the media. I've worked in radio specifically for 20 years, but I've worked in media overall for a little longer than that. And there used to be a time in my professional life where having quality equipment was like paramount. Having quality setup, equipment, like that was like the apex of importance. In today's world, you have people with hundreds of thousands of YouTube and TikTok, Instagram followers, and their mic and their video is trash, or it's just subpar quality. And it's just like, I just don't know how to comprehend a world where people are so flippant about the quality of equipment, especially when you work for a company that should be able to afford that equipment, right? And also, why is Tim Kelly the only guy? Tim Kelly's the only guy getting real-time audio and video of Dave Dombrowski. Like, you're telling me the Philadelphia Phillies, by the way, for those who see the video, the Phillies have their own website guy there. You could have live streamed it. We would have played it right here on 97.3 ESPN. I figured all the Philly stations would have done the same thing. But no, we can't do that. NBC Sports Philadelphia could have simulcast it. No, didn't do that. No, we can't do that. No, not happening. So for me, I just don't like the fact that we're living in a world that guys just can't have better equipment. I'll just leave it at that. All right. More text coming in on the White Horse RV text board at 609-403-0973. Another anonymous texter. Man, you guys do not want to put your names on these texts today. What is up with that? Text chimes in and says, I don't know why Philly fans wanted Luis Robert so bad. He doesn't bat and spends half the season on the injured list. He stinks. Everyone is so quick to want to get rid of a player, but then they baby these GMs like Daryl Morey. He has failed the Sixers, and Dombrowski is failing the Phillies. Well, listen, anonymous texter, I have never babied these guys, okay? I can't speak for everyone else, but I have, and by the way, I have been ridiculed for my criticism of Dombrowski. The Daryl Morey thing, I feel like half the fan base hates him and half the fan base appreciates him. So I can see where you're coming from with the Daryl Morey thing. I think there's a level of indifference from the fan base when it comes to Dombrowski with certain people, but I've always been critical of him. But guess what? They had to get rid of Nick Castellanos. And you're right. They should not have gotten Luis Robert Jr. because Luis Robert Jr. is completely overrated. And the Mets and their fans are going to learn that very, 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 very quickly. (609-403-0973). By the way, to Steven Ventnor, that is not me messaging you on the text board. I'm just letting you know. For those who don't know, I actually know Steven Ventnor personally. Him and I used to work together years ago. So I don't feel the need to joust back and forth with Steve on the text board. So, you know, if I need to talk to Steve, I could just text him personally. So I would never be the guy who is going back and forth with him on the text board. Steve could always just text me and be like, "Hey man, that was a bleeped up thing you just said about me on the radio," and I would be like, "Yeah, it is," or "No, it's not." We'll get to more texts on the White Horse RV text board at 609-403-0973. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill on the Sports Bash. Still to come, we have Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Andy DeCecco will be joining us for today's edition, getting into the latest with the Eagles. But coming up on the other side, I said earlier this week that Evan Cohen had one of the best takes he has ever had on Unsportsmanlike, heard Monday through Friday here on 97.3 ESPN. Just when I thought Evan Cohen had sealed the deal earlier this week, he comes back with another banger of a question. Our Unsportsmanlike moment of the day coming up next. Josh Hennig filling for Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle City, streaming live on YouTube at 97.3 ESPN, as well as on X. More Sports Bash coming up.
You're listening to The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Sam Darnold and the Seahawks have proven in the modern day NFL, not the one-off Foles comes in for Wentz, right? We're not talking about that. We're not talking about Dilfer, Brad Johnson. Just in general, more times than not, Hall of Fame level quarterbacks are the ones that win Super Bowls. Brady, Manning times 2. Eli will ultimately get in. Breeze, Rodgers, Favre, Elway, Stafford now, Mahomes. Are you ready to say that you don't need a Hall of Fame quarterback to win a Super Bowl on a consistent basis?
That was Evan Cohen this morning on Sportsmanlike, heard Monday through Friday, 6 to 10 a.m. on 97.3 ESPN. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill. Evan, I love the question. I love the question because it's selfish of me. It's a question that I have been talking about for a very long time. And it's gotten me in some trouble here at 97.3 ESPN over the years. The answer to your question is yes. Yes, you don't need a Hall of Fame quarterback to win a championship. Because as has been proven time and time again, teams win championships, not individuals. You know, John Elway lost four before he got Shannon Sharp, Terrell Davis, Rod Smith, and Ed McCaffrey on offense. Dan Marino got to 1 and never went back. You know, Steve Young was a bust, and then the 49ers got him. They developed him. They put him on a team with people like Jerry Rice. They won a championship. Ricky Waters, a running back. Then the monkey came off his back. Because you're right, Evan Cohen. The people like the Trent Dilfers, the Nick Foles, the Jeff Hostetlers, the Mark Rippons, they're not the norm. The norm when it comes to winning a championship is less about who your quarterback is and more about the team you put around him. Sam Darnold was a loser with the Jets, a loser with the Panthers. Couldn't get out of the first round with the Vikings. Wins the championship with the Seahawks. By the way, Russell Wilson won a championship with the Seahawks. Hasn't been back to the playoff with the Steelers or the Giants. Teams win championships. Who you surround the team with. Do we really think if Drake May had a better offensive line, that maybe that Super Bowl would have gone differently? Of course it would have. So you don't need a Hall of Fame quarterback to win a championship. You need a good offensive line. You need competent receivers. You need a team that does not have a flawed defense. And you need a coaching staff who knows what they're doing. So, Evan Cohen, yes, you don't need a Hall of Fame quarterback to win a championship. You need a good team to win a championship. And that's our Unsportsmanlike moment of the day here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Tune in every Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. to hear Evan Cohen, Michelle Smallman, and Chris Canty each and every day here on 97.3 ESPN. Listen, if anybody's listened to me for long enough here on 97.3 ESPN, you know I have been the one willing to say that we put more value on the quarterback position than there should be. Because I've seen Patrick Mahomes get destroyed in a championship game, the Super Bowl, because of a bad offensive line. I've seen great quarterbacks, Dan Marino being one of them. And Steve McNair was one and done as well, never got back. Those quarterbacks are not lesser people because they didn't win a championship. Phillip Rivers, Hall of Fame quarterback. You need the whole team, to quote Jason Kelsey. Football conversation coming up next. Who is Chris Cooper? Who is the replacement of Jeff Stoutland? Plus, what is the Eagles' best way to address the offseason needs? Andrew Checo joins the show next on 97.3 ESPN.
South Jersey's official play-by-play home of the Eagles, Sixers, and Flyers.
At 0 point would I ever consider not being a fan of the team.
97.3 ESPN, WENJ, WENJ HD, Millville, Atlantic City. A Town Square media station serving all of South Jersey.
Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash Football at 4. Yes, powered as it every day by the Inside the Birds podcast, InsideTheBirds.com. And it is brought to you, as always, by Ocean Casino Resort and the Fanatics Sportsbook, the place to be this football season, and basketball, hockey, and the upcoming baseball season, and all the college basketball craziness next month. The Fanatics Sportsbook is where you want to be. Go to the Fanatics Sportsbook. Go to Ocean. Go for the win. For more information, visit theoceanac.com. Andrew the Checo joining us on a Thursday as we dig into who is Jeff Stoutland's replacement. Why is he here along with the Eagles? How will they address their offseason needs? Of course, Andrew Checo has a great article right now at InsideTheBirds.com talking about the new offensive line coach. Andrew, welcome in. How you doing today?
Josh, I'm doing great, man. Great to be with you.
Now, I want to clarify. The guy's name is Chris Cooper, correct?
Yes, like the actor.
See, that's what I thought, but I've seen some people trying to phonetically spell it out differently, so I wanted to verify before we started talking about the guy, because I think this is
I'll tell you, it's Chris Cooper.
Right.
You know, I'm sure you'll hear a lot of different variations of it.
Yes.
But that's not, I mean, I'm pretty used to that right now, living in this area here, and, you know, a ton of different pronunciations for a lot of players and coaches.
Well, let's get into it, because I think that who he is actually very interesting, Andrew, as you wrote about it InsideTheBirds.com, because this isn't just some rando guy that they hired. He is someone who actually has a lot of connection to people on the current Eagles coaching staff.
Yeah, well, let's unpack this, because he spent the last 4 years as the Minnesota Vikings offensive line coach. The performance of that offensive line was very underwhelming. Now, context is needed for the 2025 group, because they threw a lot of money and a lot of resources at trying to fortify that offensive line, signing Ryan Kelly, the veteran center who struggled with concussions. They drafted Donovan Jackson out of Ohio State in the first round to play guard. They signed Will Fries to a monster free agent contract to play right guard, and they were ravaged by injuries. Now, it's on Chris Cooper, much like you saw with Jeff Stoutland, to elevate the performance of those offensive linemen that you are working with, and I don't think he did a great job with that. They surrendered 60 sacks last season, and the run game left a lot to be desired over the past few seasons. But to your point, Josh, yeah, there's some overlap there. He spent time with the Miami Dolphins in 2017 and 2018, and Josh Grizzard, the Eagles pass game coordinator, was there. When he was in Minnesota as their offensive line coach, he overlapped with Sean Mannion, of course, the Eagles' newly appointed offensive coordinator when Sean Mannion was a backup quarterback. And then, of course, he spent some time with Vic Fangio as an assistant offensive line coach when Fangio was the head coach of the Denver Broncos. So certainly that familiarity and understanding of that Kevin O'Connell style should lend itself to easing that transition as the Eagles look to reimagine that run design.
I think the other part that's interesting is that this is a guy, Andrew, that has played in the NFL. So there's another side of the coin, which is, you know, Stoutland was a guy that most of his experience was as a coach, right, with 40 years experience, whereas you have now a guy in Chris Cooper is someone who is saying, now when he's teaching the line, he can also say, when I played, I have actual hands-on experience in the 21st century.
Yeah, that's a big thing, because whoever's filling the shoes of Jeff Stoutland, the iconic offensive line coach who was in Philadelphia for 13 seasons, it's always going to be a daunting task. But what Chris Cooper has working in his favor is that he should command respect early, having played the game at the highest level, 90 games, 79 career starts, and was a really solid player when he was there with the Denver Broncos. So I think that's really going to help in terms of getting the buy-in and commanding a room. So as far as the player development piece goes, well, that's part of what made Jeff Stoutland so special and one of one. So that remains to be seen. Also, you have to wonder what style of offensive line the Eagles are going to be coveting in free agency and the draft, because if you're going to play that wide zone style, that stretch, those stretch runs, I'm not saying they won't still do inside zone, but you're going to typically look for offensive linemen that have a little bit more athleticism. They're good moving laterally, like a Cam Jurgens when he's right. So I'm curious to see how that all transpires.
Well, you kind of led me right into my next question for you. Andrew DeCecco joining us, Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. His latest article at InsideTheBirds.com, further detailing who is Jeff Stoutland's replacement, who is Chris Cooper. You mentioned about the style that they're going to play with. Help the audience understand. I think a lot of people might not fully grasp the fact how different the style of offense that Sean Mannion is coming with to Philadelphia versus what the fans have seen in recent years.
Yeah, and it's the expectation that he's bringing in these different concepts based off of the coaches that he's worked with in the past. To what extent? Well, we're going to find out, because Kellen Moore was also expected to completely put his fingerprints on the offense, and that lasted about a month before they had to scale things back and become a run-heavy team. But you're going to see more motion, like more under center, some play action, middle of the field utilization. It's a West Coast type of mind that you're getting in Sean Mannion. So the ball's got to come out quickly, timing-based. You're throwing in rhythm. And so all of those things are going to be a stark contrast from the style the Eagles have played. And then in the run game, you're looking for linemen who are fluid movers laterally. They can get out in space, climb to that second level with ease. It's also going to require patience from the running back. And that's not something that, for all the great things that Saquon Barkley has done in Philadelphia, he's not the most patient runner, nor is Tank Bigsby. I think Saquon's a little bit more on the patient side than Bigsby. Bigsby kind of just finds his own hole. But in order to really thrive in that kind of style, you have to be able to let blocks develop and find the crease and go from there.
You just mentioned something that was very interesting. I just thought of this. You just mentioned about the fluidity, the type of offensive lineman that has the most success in this type of offense. Is there a guy currently on the Eagles that you look at and say that guy is someone who fits what they're going to do well?
Yeah, Cam Jurgens. I think Jordan Mailata can do that. Landon Dickerson's more of that road grader, mauler type. He can probably do it, but I think he's best for what the Eagles used to do with that inside zone where you're just kind of surging forward and knocking linemen backwards. I think that's really where he's at his best. But Landon Dickerson can do anything, but I think he's at his best when moving forward versus laterally. Tyler Steen, I would think that those type of concepts, those designs should play to his strengths a little bit more. He can move well, moving side to side. Lane Johnson as well. Lane Johnson's as athletic as they come at right tackle. But I think more so from Landon Dickerson's perspective, and maybe even to a degree, Jordan Mailata, he's 6'8", however many pounds. And, sometimes if you look at the past lines that have had a lot of success, they're on the lighter side, and they get by with their quickness and fluidity.
I think that brings us to the other side of this conversation, because as we get closer to March and April, Andrew, I know you, the guys, the Inside the Birds podcast, you're writing InsideTheBirds.com. We're going to be transitioning even heavier into the offseason. So now that we have established this coaching staff, the Eagles obviously have needs. And one could argue, Andrew, one of those needs is the offensive line. Who is the heir apparent to Lane Johnson? Is Tyler Steen the right guy to continue to be the right guard? There are some questions about this offensive line moving forward. So for you, Andrew, and obviously we're very early in the offseason process, what is the best way to address some of these needs? Do you think it's going to be going out and getting free agents, or do you think the Eagles are going to need to be a little more heavy in the draft O-line market?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question, and I think it's going to be position dependent. So if you're asking me about the offensive line, I would say you want to lean towards getting those stopgap players in free agency that have played that style before. I look at someone like a Dalton Reisner, who was with the Broncos when Chris Cooper was there. He was with the Minnesota Vikings when Chris Cooper was there. He can play left or right guard. He's not going to break the bank. Certainly won't be cost prohibitive, but he's going to be well-versed in the style. And the reason why I say you want to go for an experienced player in free agency is because we don't yet know how Chris Cooper is going to fare in terms of player development. With Jeff Stoutland, you felt pretty comfortable drafting a player on day 1, 2, or 3 and know that he's going to help that player realize their potential. Now, if you're looking at safety, for example, well, I think Joe Casper has a pretty strong track record early on in his young career for developing defensive backs and getting them to play at optimum level. He's now their defensive backs coach, replacing Christian Parker. And I think in the draft, you want to maybe look for a more athletic type of player who would pair well with Drew Makuba, because that's the way the league's trending. In the modern NFL, you have to be able to cover a lot of ground. And for all the great things that Reed Blankenship does, from directing traffic and being such a dependable option, Vic Fangio has lauded him for his football intelligence and all of that. You need to probably get a little bit more adept in coverage from that position. And I think in addition to Drew Makuba, you could probably get more athletic there. And then tight end as well. I think the best course of action would be to re-sign Dallas Goedert if you're able to come to an agreement, but then certainly draft his understudy and have him learn from him for that season. So it's kind of position dependent in my estimation.
If I can backtrack to what you were talking about the safety for a minute, Andrew, which is, do you think that if they got a better number 2 corner on the outside, is that enough to maybe offset some of Reed Blankenship's, limitations as an athlete? Or do you feel like it doesn't matter who the other corners are? The getting a upgrade over Blankenship should be the option no matter what.
Well, I think this season, Reed had sort of a down year in terms of coverage. He's always been a really solid tackler, plays with good anticipation, makes up for whatever he lacks from athleticism with high-level football intelligence and instincts. But I still think you need to get more athletic in that area, a player who you can move around, and they might be a good matchup against move tight ends and things like that. To be clear, they need to upgrade at cornerback too as well. But I do believe that when you're looking at it through the lens of the Eagles free agents, at safety in particular, that's an area where I think that they could upgrade. And Reed Blankenship should have a fairly active market, I would imagine. He's still a young player. He's a great story of development, and he's probably going to be cost effective. But I just think, knowing the Eagles and what they, or how they build teams, they have a really young secondary, and I believe that that's an opportunity for them to add to that area. But they do need to add another cornerback as well.
I know we're still a couple months out from the draft, so I know you haven't gone fully into it, but I know you're a big draft guy, Andrew. As we've known here from your years here at Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Josh Hennig filling for Mike Gill on Thursday edition of the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Do you think this is going to be a good year to draft the tight end?
I do, but I don't think the Eagles can afford to wait past day 2. You need to get a player that isn't necessarily a dart throw with some upside, where you feel comfortable with them a couple years down the line. They need to get a succession plan in place, which is why I look at that day 2 area as really optimal for them to really put, fortify that position for the foreseeable future. If you look at what they've done in the past, whether it was Brent Selleck, Zach Ertz, Dallas Goedert, it's been the second round where they've sort of found a sweet spot there. They have a lot of needs, but I do think that either at some point on day 2 is where they should probably address it, just to make sure that you're giving them the best option moving forward. And really, depending on what Sean Mannion wants to do, that second tight end may be involved in this offense quite a bit, and you ideally want to get that player who can help you almost immediately.
Andrew, before we let you go, the other question that has been circulated a lot this offseason, and whether it's fair or not, but it has been by a lot of fans, has been, what is the future of Jake Elliott? This is a guy who, is a 2-time Super Bowl champion, but he has had some issues at times in recent years. Do you believe it's time to maybe bring in some competition for Jake, or do you think that the Eagles need to give him another offseason to try to recalibrate and come back and see what he can do next year?
Well, I think he's built up enough equity with the Eagles to bring him back for another season, but that's not to suggest that they shouldn't bring in competition because he's gone uncontested each and every summer. A lot of times, if you can remember back to the Andy Reid years, they would bring in a kicker to training camp to, take a little bit of pressure off David Akers and not have him take on all that, all that work. But they were never viable contenders for a roster spot. I think this time needs to be a little bit different. You don't often see kickers get drafted, not an abundance of them, I should say. So maybe you bring in an acclaimed undrafted free agent. Maybe you see a younger player as a free agent right now, like when it opens on March 11th, that intrigues you a little bit. You bring him in, you sign him to a modest contract, and you see how the chips land. But they do need to make sure that they have that rectified moving forward because it's cost the Eagles some games.
He's Andrew. Check out all of his coverage of the Philadelphia Eagles at InsideTheBirds.com. Great article up right now about new offensive line coach Chris Cooper. Who is he? What can we expect from him? All the details as he covers the Eagles all year long with us here on the Sports Patch Football at 4 at Andrew the Checo on the X platform. Andrew, appreciate the time. Talk soon.
I'm surprised you didn't get into any of the Kevin Patullo conversation.
I kind of don't care.
Oh well, that's fair, but he landed on his feet. And,
I know. Well, I made the joke.
I'm glad to see that.
I made the joke yesterday, Andrew, that I don't know who's happier that Kevin Patullo has a new job. Is it Eagle fans or his wife? Because he's from the Florida area.
Well, it should be Kevin because it gives him a fresh opportunity to kind of redevelop or tap into another level of his coaching prowess. And I think that he was sort of unfairly scrutinized here to a degree, and I think a lot of that ire that was directed solely at him was a little misguided at times. So I'm glad to see him land on his feet.
Listen, as long as you don't say he did a tremendous job like A.J. Brown, I'm good with you, Andrew, okay?
No, the offense was far from being among the NFL's elite. That there's a lot of areas of opportunity there. So,
well, Andrew, I can confirm that you always do a great job covering the Eagles, and we appreciate your time, and we look forward to having you on again next week.
Thanks, Josh. Take care, man.
Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. And yes, football at 4 is always powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, InsideTheBirds.com, and presented by Ocean Casino Resort and the Fanatics Sportsbook, the place to be for the UFC fights. All the college basketball craziness next month for the month of March, as well as the basketball season, the hockey season, maybe the Olympics. You want to go throw down a wager or two. And don't forget about your preseason baseball wagers. Go to the Fanatics Sportsbook. Go to Ocean. Go for the win. For more information, visit the OceanAC.com. And listen, I did mean it a little tongue-in-cheek to Andrew there as we were talking about the Eagles because, for me, I look at the situation when it comes to Patullo leaving as I was never a fan of his. I hated the hire when it happened. I always had a level of disgust with this. He always felt to me like a Nepo baby. He always felt like this guy who only had the job because him and Sirianni were friends. And maybe Andrew's right. Maybe Patullo can become his best self somewhere else and take his, for all I know, he could coach in the NFL for the next 15, 20 years and have a nice little career for himself. It just couldn't be in Philadelphia. He was put into what is basically a no-win situation. He was never going to be able to build that roster the way you were hoping and thinking he could. And so, yeah, go to Miami. Go hit the reset button. I mentioned earlier on the Sports Bash here on 97.3 ESPN, Josh Hennig filling for Mike Gill, about how I know we live in a society that likes to say it's either one side or the other for everything. It's either A or B. It can never be all of the above. And I think that, like I was saying about Castellanos and Dave Dombrowski earlier in the show, I feel that there is a similar vibe when it comes to the reality of Kevin Mitullo, which is two things can simultaneously be true. Kevin Mitullo should have never had the job, and he was put in a no-win situation for a guy who had zero play calling experience. But you can also say that Kevin Mitullo did a bad job with the responsibilities given to him, and because he should have never had the job, he might have overcompensated. And I'm surprised more people have not talked about the comment that Richard Sherman made on Nick Foles' podcast, where he explained that Kevin Mitullo reached out to a guy who he's friends with, Ryan Fitzpatrick, who Richard Sherman works with on the Amazon Prime NFL games. And, Sherman explained that Mitullo reached out to Fitzpatrick and said, hey, man, everybody's being too hard on me. They don't understand how hard this is. And it's like, it doesn't matter how hard it is. And this is the problem with people like Kevin Mitullo, which is why a fan base like Philadelphia, a hardworking, blue-collar, grinded-out fan base, is never going to accept that kind of mentality. Maybe your house doesn't get egged. Not justifying what happened. That was dumb. It was illegal. It was wrong. It should never happen to him. But maybe if you handled your business differently, if you verbalized things differently, if you approached your job differently, people wouldn't feel like you were getting a free paycheck. That's where I think some of these people don't understand the Philadelphia fan base. It's not that the Philly fan base is mean. It's that we're not this is not a fair weather fan. You go to cities like Atlanta and other parts of the country, the fandom of some of those teams in those cities. I'll throw in a city like Memphis, right? Or a city like, I'm trying to think of a good example. Dallas. Dallas is one, right? Where the fans are not live and die with their team. You cannot be a player or a coach in a place like a Philadelphia or a New York or a Boston or a Cleveland or a Chicago and be I did my best today. Tomorrow's another day. Like, we need a little more from you because we feel differently about the game and your job. And for a lot of people, you see the amount of money these coaches and players make, and you look around and you say, if I was making that kind of money, I would do X, Y, Z. Well, the reason why you would do X, Y, Z is because you know what it's like to fight and claw for everything that you have. Your paycheck, your professional success. And so the hard work ethic that comes from the majority of the Philadelphia sports fan base, when they see the players and coaches not putting in at least what they feel is a certain level of work and passion and grit to the performance of the team on the field, on the court, on the ice, the fans get mad. And that's why a guy like Nick Castellanos always rubbed me the wrong way. That's why a guy like a Cutter Gauthier is so despised in a city like Philadelphia. Or a guy back in the late 90s, early 2000s like J.D. Drew was looked at the way that he was by the Philly fan base. It's the reason why all these different players and coaches are viewed the way they are, for better or for worse, is because the fans want you to care somewhere in the vicinity as much as they do. And the moment that they perceive that you don't, that's when the thought enters their mind, I'm going to go egg Kevin Mitullo's house. And we've talked way more about Kevin Mitullo than I ever wanted to here on the Sports Bash today on 97.3 ESPN. For those who didn't see, Kevin Mitullo is now the new pass game coordinator for the Miami Dolphins, which I say good for him. I'm sure his wife is happy to be back in Florida. All right, coming up, We'll check back in on the Whitehorse RV text board at 609-403-0973. We'll also continue the football conversation on the other side. What was said on ESPN's Get Up this morning that is creating the latest rounds of rumor and speculation? We will touch on that. Also, don't forget, we will get back into the NBA. Sixers, an embarrassing loss last night to the Knicks. Austin Krell from Sports Illustrated will join us at 5 p.m. And also, don't forget, Nick Castellanos has been released today. He is out of here. He is done. Your thoughts on the Castellanos era being over. Also, don't forget Josh Hennig, Philly for Mike Gill on the Sports Bash. You hear me each and every Saturday from 12 to 3 p.m. hanging with Hennig. This Saturday, we'll be at the Mike Seafood Run Walk for Autism. Listen, every year over President's Day weekend, for almost 20 years, Mike Seafood Run Walk for Autism has been raising money to help children with disabilities. The 5K run and the 1 mile walk will begin at noon this Saturday at JFK Boulevard and the Boardwalk. And listen, we will be out there with 97.3 ESPN to support this family-friendly event. We invite everybody to come out. Don't forget, you can still register right now online at polarbearrunwalkforautism.com. Yeah, Mike Seafood, runwalkforautism.com to pre-register. They're asking everyone to get there as early as possible for the run walk on Saturday. Again, we will be out there, 97.3 ESPN. I'll be out there all day for the Run Walk for Autism. I'll be checking in with Billy Schweim in the locker room from 10 a.m. to noon. They'll be hosting a special edition of Hanging with Hennig live from Excursion Park in Sea Isle City this Saturday. So again, if you can come out and support, even if you're not going to run or walk, they have great raffle opportunities for you to win Eagles, Phillies, Sixers, and Flyers tickets, along with other great prizes. So even if you're not running and walking on the promenade at noon this Saturday, by the way, it's supposed to be a really nice day on Saturday, so the weather will be accommodating for the event. You can also hang out in the heated tent, contribute with the raffle, and other great opportunities for you to support this great cause. Because again, any day you can do something with children, for children with disabilities, it is a good day. And myself, Josh Hennig, and 97.3 ESPN are proud to be on location for the third straight year and supporting the Mike Seafood Run Walk for Autism. Again, we'll get back to Tech Sport on the other side. 609-403-0973. More Eagles talk next on 97.3 ESPN.
It's the Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
And I am the voice of the voiceless.
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. You're listening to the Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
And it just keeps getting better.
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
Some people I've talked to around the league, some executives with other teams, do expect that the Eagles will at least entertain a trade for A.J. Brown, who was unhappy on numerous fronts. I mean, name the counts where he looked like he was miserable out there. Body language wasn't good. So something has to give. That's sort of the feeling right now. They could build around Devontae Smith and some other pieces. Saquon, maybe add a wide receiver. So he would create a haul for the Eagles if they do go that route. Nothing has happened as of yet.
That was Jeremy Fowler this morning on Get Up on ESPN television. The A.J. Brown saga, nowhere as bad as the Castellanos fiasco, but still functioning like a good old sports soap opera. So what is next for A.J. Brown? Well, Jeremy Fowler, as you heard, say that they will entertain calls for A.J. Now, I will preface this by saying that I in no means saying the Eagles must trade A.J. Brown or they will trade A.J. Brown, but I am fully aware that A.J. Brown's future may not be in Philadelphia. And I think part of the reason why he won't be has to do with the fact of how this season went. I think people are forgetting when they talk about this conversation that A.J. Brown had arguably one of the worst years of his career. Even though A.J. Brown was, again, for the third time in the last 4 years, top 20 in targets in the NFL, his receiving yards have decreased every year since the first years in Philadelphia, now all the way down to barely over 1,000 receiving yards. There could be an argument made that Philadelphia may want to get out of the A.J. Brown business before he regresses so far that they can't do anything about it. Andrew Hawkins, former NFL wide receiver, went into more about the idea that the A.J. Brown and the Eagles, their time may be up.
There's been so much friction that we could see with our own eyes, right? Like, we don't even know what happens behind the scenes. A.J. Brown is a top 5 receiver in this National Football League, and he has not had that level of production because they've had some chains on him since, he's gotten to Philadelphia. They've won a championship. I'm of the mindset to free A.J. Brown. Let him go to an organization where he can be the most talented receiver in the NFL because he has that level of ability. And if it is a friction on your offensive side of the ball that is resulting in what we saw a year ago, it is absolutely time.
And I think the bar at the end is there is very important. How about the friction? A.J. Brown has been described by other people who have been around the Eagles, who have been his teammate, that he is a guy who wears his emotions on his sleeve. And he wears his emotions so intently that it impacts his ability to play the game. Well, if A.J. Brown is incapable of turning on that switch, if he is incapable of saying, hey, I'm not happy, but I'm still going to go out here and give you my best effort, then he should not be a Philadelphia Eagle. If he is incapable of doing everything to the best of his ability, no matter whether he's personally frustrated or not, then he shouldn't have the job. Part of life, not just sports, part of life, is we all at times have to do things that we don't want to. Because it's our job. It's our responsibility. If you had a job and you worked with somebody who his mood, his feelings dictated his ability to do his job, you would be frustrated, wouldn't you? And Andrew Hawkins said, listen, if he is part of the friction with this offense, which according to the reports out there, he has been part of the friction with this offense, then guess what? Like Castellanos, we can show him the door. Louis Riddick, former NFL front office executive and former NFL player, on Get Up this morning, he as well talked about the potential divorce between A.J. Brown and the Eagles.
On the football field, from a pure talent perspective, of course it's not. You don't want to get in the business of trading people like this, but I understand exactly what Hawk is saying. Sometimes less is more. Sometimes things do run their course in the NFL. And look, there's nothing more important when you're talking about, offensive continuity as far as the relationship between a wide receiver and a quarterback. And you could just tell this is strained, man. There's a lot of things going on underneath the surface here that are not going to allow Jalen Hurts to kind of reach his full potential and A.J. Brown to reach his full potential. And that's what you need here. And it may be time for them to go ahead and move on from him. And it may be ultimately what both of these guys need and what they both want.
That's a wild thought that I don't think has been brought up enough. Is A.J. Brown's issues, his lack of work ethic, or maybe not lack of work ethic, I think that's unfair. His lack of doing his best on every play, his allowing his emotions to interfere with his ability to do his job. Are any of those issues holding Jalen Hurts back? Is A.J. Brown's complaining and his passive-aggressive nature and his, I'm going to say one thing on social media and then smile to your face in front of the cameras and say something completely different, is that wearing on the psyche of the quarterback? Did Jalen Hurts last year feel obligated to get the ball to A.J. Brown? Because A.J. Brown had some big games statistically, and the Eagles lost those games. Has A.J. Brown put Jalen Hurts into a no-win situation where Hurts feels like he must run the offense a certain way, even if that way of running the offense is not good for the team because A.J. Brown might complain? Now, speaking of the quarterback, this morning on Get Up on ESPN television, the cast of characters on the show, again, reputable people, I'm not diminishing them at all, but they did play with fire. They did open a can of worms when Jeremy Fowler, ESPN NFL insider, said this.
One question around the league is, do they draft a quarterback maybe in day two to apply a little bit of pressure on Jalen Hurts, who I believe is at a crossroad right now after the way last season went. And Jalen Hurts was drafted in the second round, eventually replaced Carson Wentz, who got a massive deal just that offseason before. Does that same thing now happen to Jalen Hurts eventually?
And listen, on the surface, it sounds like you're stirring the pot, right? But Howie Roseman has been with this organization for over 25 years. He has been in the building when this team has drafted other quarterbacks. You heard him mention, hey, they drafted Jalen Hurts in the second round years ago. They drafted Nick Foles in the third round years ago. This is an organization that drafted Kevin Cobb in the second round when Donovan McNabb was the starting quarterback. And there's a long list of quarterbacks they have drafted over the years as developmental pieces. Now, historically, this is on brand for the Eagles, but the way they're framing it on the show makes it sound like, could the Eagles draft Jalen Hurts' replacement? Which in and of itself sounds insane, because he is just a year removed from being Super Bowl MVP. It's not like Jalen Hurts has regressed to a point where he's no longer a good functional starting quarterback. To which Andrew Hawkins, again, former NFL wide receiver, says that the biggest problem for Jalen Hurts might not be actually Jalen Hurts.
I think Jalen Hurts is a good quarterback. I think he's obviously a Super Bowl winning, Super Bowl MVP quarterback. I think that the worst part about their offense is that they're doing musical chairs at the offensive coordinator position, and that is extremely hard on any quarterback. I don't care how long you've been in the league. And so even when you get a new quarterback in, if you are playing musical chairs at that OC position, it's going to be the same result no matter who you have in there.
Again, that's a former player insinuating the same thing that has been discussed by other former players. Nick Foles on the Season podcast. Kurt Warner has suggested this on his podcast, as well as on Westwood One Sports here on 97.3 ESPN. I've heard a lot of people bring this up, a lot of former players, that you can't expect Jalen to do his best and be his best if you're constantly changing the coordinator, the offense, the game planning, the system, the strategy. Last year, Jalen Hurts had 25 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. The 25 passing touchdowns is actually the most he has ever had in a single season. Also, for Jalen Hurts, in the 5 seasons he has been a starting quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles, it is the third time in those 5 seasons that he has had 6 or fewer interceptions thrown. And by the way, 4 of those came in one game. Overall, Jalen Hurts is a good quarterback, as Andrew Hawkins says. But the problem is that when you keep moving the goalposts, when you keep changing the verbiage, the person in his ear, it's going to be a problem. Now, you can only hope that new offensive coordinator, Sean Mannion, he's so new, he's so fresh off the lot, that no one's going to want to trade him in for a higher model anytime soon. And I think that's the bigger thing. I don't think the Eagles are trying to replace Jalen Hurts. I think the Eagles are trying to get an insurance policy for Jalen Hurts. When they drafted Jalen Hurts in 2020, this has been reported by numerous people, from Jeff McClain to Nick Foles and others, have said Jalen Hurts was drafted because he fit the mold and the prototype of the type of player the Eagles like to have. No one ever said they drafted him to be the starter. It just happened that way. Same thing goes for Nick Foles. Same thing goes for Kevin Kolb. These guys were not drafted to overtly be the starting quarterback. They were drafted because they fit the model and the prototype of the Eagles like to have in the quarterback position. But of course, Louis Riddick had the final say on Get Up this morning on ESPN. And he didn't necessarily say that Jeremy Fowler was wrong, and he didn't put the fire out either.
One of the best times to draft quarterbacks is when you don't need one. Is when you're kind of looking around the corner down the road. Even though here, they may not be looking around the corner down the road. They may be staring it straight on as far as maybe, what's in store for the future in Philadelphia at that position.
And I think that's where the internet's going to go nuts. That's where the rumor and the speculation is going to go wild. That could the Eagles draft the heir apparent? Would they draft the quarterback in the second round? And part of the reason why we're even having this conversation is because this is looked at as not a great quarterback draft class. This is a draft class that is viewed as very, very, very underwhelming. So could the Eagles land a quarterback who maybe has a higher upside, but is a few years away from even being a starter? And what I'm thinking of when I say that is a guy like Trinidad Chambliss of Ole Miss, a guy who wanted to go back to college, was denied the ability because they counted his D2 years against him as part of his D1 eligibility. Is he a guy that you draft, let's say, in the 3rd round and you develop him? And God forbid something happens to Jalen Hurts' health long term. And maybe 4 years from now, when Jalen Hurts' body might be breaking down, you might need the new guy. Another guy is Taylor Green. Again, these are athletic quarterbacks, guys who are used to chucking the ball all over the field. They are not guys who are pure running quarterbacks. What if you have a team call you this offseason and say, how much for Tanner McKee? How much do you are willing to give? If someone gives you a massive trade offer for Tanner McKee, are we really that excited about Sam Howell being the backup next year? Or would you like the Eagles to prepare for a break glass in case of emergency? That's what I think they're really trying to say. But you know the world we live in, everyone loves to react. We'll hear what the reaction is on the text board, the White Horse RV text board at 609-403-0973. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
You're listening to the Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
And if you're not down with that, we got 2 words for you.
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. You're listening to The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Let's check in on the Whitehorse RV text board before we wrap up the 4 o'clock hour. Don't forget Austin Krell from Sports Illustrated will join us. Talk about the Sixers coming up in the next hour here on 97.3 ESPN. Phil and Briggsy says, Josh, assuming they can get a first-round draft pick for AJ, would you want the pick in the upcoming draft and take a huge cap hit? Also, would you be interested in signing Alec Pierce, says Phil and Briggsy? I love the idea of Alec Pierce actually coming to the Eagles. And I would take the first-round pick, and I would use the draft Denzel Boston from Washington. Son of David Boston, by the way. Get a big stud receiver, similar to A.J. Brown, across from Devontae Smith. And then, what if you went to Devontae in this new offense and said, you could be a top-tier receiver out of the slot, but Alec Pierce on the outside? That would be a dynamic offense, Phil and Brigantine. And when it comes to the huge cap hit, do we really believe that Howie Roseman can't figure out a way around that? I'm just saying. I trust in Howie Roseman's ability to manage a salary cap. James in Delaware chimes in the Whitehorse RV text board, says, who do you think gave more attention and dedication to their job last year, A.J. Brown or Kevin Patullo? I didn't see any fans rolling up at A.J. Brown's house, maybe because they thought he'd be reading a book on the front step, says James in Delaware. I will say, James, I think part of the problem is there's a contingent of fans who will always blame the coach, and they'll never blame the player for anything, ever, ever, ever. I think there's a contingent of fans who will always make excuses for players and always blame the coach, and that's probably why. Jack May Courthouse says next year is supposed to be the big quarterback draft class with depth guys. I think we already have a backup successor in Tanner McKee, or no? I think Tanner McKee's got some limitations, but we'll circle back to that, Jack, a little bit later in the 5 o'clock hour. Coming up next, Sixers' embarrassing loss last night. Stay in the Sixers at the All-Star break with Austin Krell from Sports Illustrated next. Josh Hennig, filling in for Mike Gill. Thursday edition of the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN FM, 97.3 ESPN. Mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle City. Don't forget to keep the text coming in, 609-403-0973, the White Horse RV text board. We'll get to that coming up around 5:30. A bunch of texts came in the last hour. I don't want to ignore you guys, so we're going to circle back around and get to you in just a bit. And yes, the White Horse RV text board in Williamstown and Galloway. Your RV adventure starts here at White Horse RV. You know, it's interesting because the Nick Castellanos news, I mean, I still got to finish going through the Matt Gelb article. But also, you know, the latest with the Eagles, future of A.J. Brown. Maybe for some of you, it's Olympic hockey. All of it is overshadowing the embarrassing, pathetic, horrible loss by the 76ers last night. Last night, the 76ers had their worst loss to the New York Knicks in 519 games played between the two franchises. Losing by 49 points is the largest margin of loss by a Sixers team all time to the Knicks. The New York Knicks also became the first team to win 6 games at Philadelphia consecutively in the last 40 years. I'm not saying the Sixers are getting off easy, but I don't know. It's almost like people expect them to lose, so when they do lose, it's less of a heartbreak. Is that what it is? I'm guessing that's what it is. That's my working assumption. We'll try to connect with Austin Krell from Sports Illustrated in just a bit, but we'll get through those text board messages now at 609-403-0973. And I hate to tell the text on the text board, I got to admit, I have not been hyper aggressively watching the Olympic hockey, mostly because of the fact that I lose track of when the Olympics are on anymore. I was having a conversation with somebody the other day. Like, I feel like the Winter Olympics has lost a lot of juice. So for me, I'm not as interested as I used to be. It's one of those things where it's like, I look at this, like what happened later. Who won? Who lost? All right, cool. I mean, I could put it on here in the studio. I got other stuff in my mind right now. You know, I'm, filling in for Mike Gill on the Sports Bash. Trying to put on a good show for you guys. Trying to take care of all my normal work behind the scenes over here. Got a lot of moving parts here. Olympic hockey fell on the list. A couple texts coming in on the text board at 609-403-0973. Matt in Delaware chimes in. The White Horse RV text board says, hey, Josh, I was wondering if you think Embiid cares about how they got their butt kicked last night by the Knicks, or if he follows the trainer and has no say when he plays or when he doesn't play. He needs to have that anger and drive when they tell him to sit out and they get beat by 49, says Matt in Delaware. Listen, I don't think, and Austin Krall can probably answer this better than I can, joining us from Sports Illustrated. I don't think Embiid is this callous, emotionless, he has no feeling at all kind of guy. I just tend to think that Embiid is an individual who I think he understands that he has physical limitations, and I think Embiid's doing the best he can to, follow the doctor's instructions so he doesn't get re-injured. Maybe Austin Krell can answer that for us a little bit more from Sports Illustrated. By the way, he used to work with us here at 97.3 ESPN. Now he's Sports Illustrated Sixers reporter extraordinaire. Austin, how you doing today?
Doing good. Thanks for having me, like always.
I appreciate you jumping on. So let's stick with Matt in Delaware's question, which is and I'll rephrase it. He wants to know, does Embiid even care if they lost the game last night? And I feel like that's not fair because I don't think Embiid doesn't care, Austin. I just think Embiid realizes that he has an injury history and he's got to do what's best for him, his health, and the team's future, right?
I think it's I think this. I think as a player in the NBA, you have to be a little bit more rational about an 82 game season. Just because it's a very long year, and if you get bent out of shape over every loss, like you're just gonna have a miserable experience. So I think, of course, he cares, but I don't think he's gonna be, living and dying with it the same way that the fans are. I mean, I think the consumers of NBA as a whole. And this flies directly in against my own benefit because I rely on people to be interested in the NBA. But like the emotional up and down of an NBA season is it's like too much. It's not football. It's not a 16 game season. You can't treat every game like it's like oh, if they lose, they don't care. Like you're gonna lose games sometimes.
With that being said, though, that is the largest margin of victory a Sixers team has ever lost to the Knicks in 519 matchups. So was last night like a red flag? Was it just, hey, it was a bad night at the office? Like, how do we disseminate that loss, Austin? Because that was more than just, hey, we lost to the Knicks and Embiid didn't play. That was wow, we literally got taken to the woodshed and we had zero answers.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think we have to allow for some randomness over the course of an 82 game season. Like every team, I don't care who you are, every team loses via blowout fashion, a couple times a year, as long as it's not a consistent trend. And they've had a couple of ugly ones, like the Magic game, like the Hornets game, this game last night. I've also counted up those games. There's only 3 of them on the schedule. So like it's not great. It's always some level of like, where was your effort? Where was your mind? But 3 is not a ton, and it's not enough to be like, well, this raises fundamental questions about them. I mean, I think just stepping away from it, a lot of guys have played this season, and they're relying on some heavy minute guards, and they're all probably pretty tired. They just got back from a road trip, and it isn't excusable what happened last night. But it's like, so sometimes you're just not you're gonna come out, you're gonna get whacked in the mouth, and that's the game. And that's how it was against the Knicks last night.
Well, you mentioned about trends. Austin Krell from Sports Illustrated joining us here on the Sports Bash. Josh Hennig filling from Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN. Is it a trend that they've lost 3 or 4 games since trading away Jared McCain?
It's interesting. And I'm someone who has been very vocal about, like, we have to divorce the trading away Jared McCain aspect from they got out of the tax aspect. Like, one of those things is like trading Jared McCain in a vacuum is not a massive deal, right? He was a 4th guard, and he was he had a lot of defensive struggles this year. His offense came on very delayed. He was behind 3 other guys, so there was really not a lot of minutes for him. However, they also did not get better. They didn't make any additive moves at the deadline. So I do wonder, like, is there something to it where he was such an emotional, positive energy, positive force for the team that maybe they're a little bit down at the moment? I suppose it's certainly possible. But I don't think the basketball part of this is what's holding them back. I think, if anything, we would point to just they just didn't make any other additive decisions here.
Well, right, because it's not. I said this earlier in the show, Austin, that I don't think Jared McCain literally being traded put them in the situation, But I think it's the fact that, as Maury said, they made the trade with the idea they were going to make another move. They never made the other move. And now it's like, okay, now you're down a guard because you traded McCain. Maybe you could have gotten more rebounding. Maybe you could have gotten more shooting, and you didn't do those things. And whether Daryl Morey likes it or not, guess what? The Cavs and the Celtics and other teams both got better in the Eastern Conference while you were waiting on something to happen that didn't happen. I think that is where the issue is. And the fan, the fans are awesome. They're not afraid to speak their mind. They're out there banging the table being like, I'm watching Jared McCain score, 8 points in 75 seconds last night. And they're like, why could he do that here?
Well, he did do that here, number one. And number two, everyone's going to be like, oh, Jared McCain was unbelievable. He also had 12 points in 22 minutes on 8 shots. And the other night he had 7 points in 14 minutes against Houston in his debut, had 5 points in 14 minutes. He's not going to OKC and immediately shooting the cover off the basketball. We had to be a little bit rational about this, but I do understand the aspect of this team was not a very good shooting team anyway. They are below average now for the season, and the guy you just traded away was one of your better shooters. Yeah, that's true. And if we wanted to have qualms about the move, I would say your bigger qualm should be, why didn't you just trade Nick? Oh, why not Nick Castellanos? My goodness. Why didn't you?
Same difference. Same difference.
Same guy. Why didn't you just trade Quentin Grimes instead? And the answer is because they didn't pay him in the offseason. And, and if they had paid him in the offseason, that would have raised salary cap issues when it comes to the tax thresholds. So I do think ultimately a lot of this comes back to the message coming down from above, which is coming from, whether it's ownership, whether it's Daryl Morey, whoever it's from, the combined lack of movement at the deadline sends a message down the line that it's what are we really playing for? And I do think that fans have a right to be furious about the lack of a move. The players certainly do as well. I still would push back on the notion of why should I watch this team or why should I care about this team? Because you don't watch any sport for the owners. You don't watch the Phillies for John Middleton. You don't watch the Eagles for Howie Roseman or Jeff Lurie. You don't watch the Sixers for Josh Harris. You watch them because of the players in the jerseys, and you have an emotional tie to them. And those players, Tyrese, if it's Joel, BJ Edgecombe, those guys are still there. They're still in the thick of things in the Eastern Conference.
Austin, another position that a lot of people have questions about, and since Mike Gill is not here, I'll do my best Mike Gill impersonation here, which is why isn't guys like Charles Bassey and Adem Bona getting more minutes?
Last night I was certainly after I saw Drummond throw his second and third pass to the opposing team, like he was Drake May in the Super Bowl. I was about done with Drummond for the night, and Bona also got just roasted through 6 minutes of the game. I was certainly of the belief that that Bassey should play. I don't know. I don't have a good answer why they didn't give him more latitude to play last night, or why they didn't make it abundantly clear that what they were getting from Bona and Drummond wasn't acceptable. But the only thing I can think of is the only position that is more difficult to learn quickly than point guard is center, and center is a very difficult center. You are the last bastion of defense at the rim. It is the hardest job to learn schemes and adjust on the fly. So maybe they don't think he's ready yet, but also this is a 10-day contract. He's not going to be ready in 10 days anyway. So I don't get it.
Well, I think that's where maybe it's not literally Bassey, right? Although it is weird. It's you're being blown out by 40-some points. You played 5 minutes last night. You could have played him the whole fourth quarter. Who cares, right? But I digress. It's the idea that someone texted in the show earlier. I think it's a great point, Austin. Nick Nurse was a guy in Toronto who was known for getting the most out of guys who were certain types of players and being a guy who does more with less and being the kind of coach who amplifies people and makes them better than they are. And it feels like the Nick Nurses in Toronto never came to Philadelphia. So it's kind of like a weird dynamic because I think the fans were expecting Nurse to be a certain type of coach, and they really haven't gotten at least what the fans expected him to be.
So I would push back on that, and I would say, was it what he was in Toronto, or did we just perceive him that way down here in Philadelphia? And I think a fair conversation to have is how much of Nick Nurse's title run in Toronto was just the entire Raptors team riding on Kawhi Leonard's back as he made jump shot after jump shot in game after game. How much of it was really just superior coaching over the course. I mean, granted, the next season they were very good after Kawhi left, but also they were the 2 seed in the playoffs and lost second round. And the playoffs are extraordinarily different than the regular season. So I can understand some questions about Nick. I do think his job is a little bit more difficult than a lot of coaches' jobs are, just because you're the most important player on the team is very much a variable rather than he is a fixed thing. But yeah, I think there are certain things that he can do without Joel that would play well in Philadelphia. When you have a player who is a veteran who is getting minutes seemingly only because he's a veteran and not because he's playing well and deserving them, yeah, you should send a message to that guy and say, this isn't acceptable. Charles Bass, he should be in the game.
Couple more for Austin Krell from Sports Illustrated joining us here on 97.3 ESPN. Let's just project out. And I am not trying to put you in a bad spot, so if I do, just tell me to bug off. But, let's say the Sixers lose in the first round of the postseason, and it's another disappointing year. Is anyone in trouble? Is anyone on the hot seat in this organization, or would they view this year as kind of like things didn't go our way, we'll pump for next year?
It's an interesting question. Obviously, I don't have any intel at this time on that, but I would say if the president of basketball operations is following the rules and checking the boxes that the owner requires of him, it would be hard to justify firing the president of basketball operations. And maybe they would say, it's like it is in a lot of sports. A frustrated owner might say, it's either you or the coach, and then you're kind of forcing someone's hand. But I think they've dropped enough games this year that they should have won, and that if they do lose in the first round, it should be viewed as a disappointment. I think they're better than that.
Do you buy anything into the speculation that Bob Myers is here in case Daryl Morey fails?
No. In fact, very early in the process, it was pretty clear that Bob was not there to breathe down Daryl's back. It's more so that he was offered a opportunity to work in sports at a global level, with Harris's whole portfolio. And that was an appealing opportunity to him. Does that mean that I would be surprised? I don't think anything would surprise me anymore in this league. I've seen Luka Doncic traded, so I don't think anything would surprise me. But my understanding and belief is that he wasn't put there solely to apply pressure.
He's Austin Krell. Make sure you check out all of his coverage of the 76ers in Sports Illustrated. I believe it's NBA Krell is the X handle, correct?
That's where you can yell at me and tell me I'm an idiot. Yeah.
Well, it's okay. People do that to me too. I just ignore them.
There you
go. I just don't. You know what it is, Austin? I always tell people I don't have the energy anymore to deal with stupid people. If you're gonna be the guy who's got some weird avatar on your handle and have a fake name and come at me on social media, I just not gonna give you my energy. I got other things to do.
Well, I tell my family this. I always say, I can give you the keys to the correct answer. You're the one who has to take the test, and they all love that. They all love my my quick-witted arrogance in the family for sure.
That's always a good. Listen, if you weren't quick-witted, you probably wouldn't have the job that you have.
That's exactly right.
Austin, always appreciate the good stuff. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Josh.
Josh Hennig here on 97.3 ESPN, filling in for Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash. We'll get back to the text board on the other side. 609-403-0973 is the White Horse RV text board. White Horse RV Center in Williamstown and Galloway. Your RV adventure starts here at White Horse RV. Josh Hennig, filling in for Mike Gill on the Sports Bash. 97.3 ESPN FM, 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle City. Streaming live on YouTube at 97.3 ESPN as well as on X. More Eagles, Sixers, Phillies conversation and more on the other side right here on 97.3 ESPN.
You're listening to the Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. I can't see him, but he talks to me.
On 97.3 ESPN.
You've still got it, but your immune system weakens as you age, making it harder to fight flu, pneumococcal pneumonia, RSV, and COVID-19. Ask your doctor or pharmacist which vaccines you need. Sponsored by Pfizer.
Progressive Insurance presents the Sports Flash on 97.3 ESPN. NBA, the Sixers lose Wednesday night to the Knicks 138-89. That's a 49-point loss for Philadelphia. Tyrese Maxey led the Sixers with 32. VJ Edgecombe had 14. Philadelphia played the game without Joel Embiid for the second straight night. They shot 38% from the floor and went 6 for 32 from behind the arc. They now head to the All-Star break and will return February 19th against the Atlanta Hawks. The Flyers are back February 24th as they are taking time off of the Winter Olympic break. They'll face Washington when they return. They have 61 points. That puts them 6th in the Metropolitan Division. And spring training is underway for the Philadelphia Phillies. Pitchers and catchers working out in Clearwater. Monday will be the first full squad workout, and the Grapefruit League opener will be February 21st against the Toronto Blue Jays. The sports update brought to you by Progressive. Bundle auto and home, renters or condo, and save with Progressive. I'm Tony Desiri, and that's your Sports Flash on 97.3 ESPN.
From the Town Square, New Jersey Info and Weather Network, I'm Chief Meteorologist Dan Zarrow. Tomorrow's Friday the 13th. Weather looks fine, though. One more day on the cool side, then you'll love the warm-up for Valentine's Day. Tonight's going to be chilly, partly cloudy skies, low of 22 degrees. Tomorrow, sunny, calm, and cool, high of 38, jumping to 48 for Saturday. Nice. Mostly sunny and dry. Next chance for some rain and snow move in late day on Sunday. Get weather 24/7 wherever you are. Download our free mobile app today.
We have the perfect solution for sitting in traffic.
You come with me.
The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
Josh Hennig back here on 97.3 ESPN. Filling in for Mike Gill in the Sports Bash. Don't forget, Hanging with Hennig Saturday, 12 to 3 p.m. We'll be hanging out with you at Mike's Seafood Run Walk for Autism. Yes, the 5K run and 1 mile walk on JFK Boulevard, the Promenade in Seattle City is the 18th year that they are raising money for children with disabilities. Come on down, not just for the run and walk, but also you can get in on the raffle to win prizes like Eagles, Phillies, Sixers, Flyers tickets, and other great prizes. But you must come down to the Mike's Seafood Run Walk for Autism. If you do want to run or walk, you can pre-register right now at Mike's Seafood RunWalkForAutism.com. It's going to be a beautiful day on Saturday. It's probably one of the best weather days of the month of February this Saturday. So don't just hang around the house. Why don't you come on down, hang out in Sea Isle, have a chance to win some prizes, and be a part of a great day of raising money for a great cause. Because any day you could do something for children with disabilities. It is a good day. They had a record turnout last year, and this will be our third straight year that myself, Josh Hennig, and 97.3 ESPN will be out there and supporting the Mike's Seafood Run Walk for Autism. So come on down, hang out, support a great cause, and enjoy a great day in Sea Isle City this Saturday, Valentine's Day, Mike's Seafood Run Walk for Autism. Again, you can pre-register right now at Mike's Seafood Run Walk for Autism.com. Let's get back to the text board. We got a lot of texts that have been coming in at 609-403-0973. And, you know, today's one of those days, the Nick Castellanos news dropping earlier, the Sixers' embarrassing loss last night, the latest Eagles rumors, speculation. It's one of those days where I will say, you know, I am so grateful to have this job because it's just so much fun to go through all these stories and engage with all of you listening here on 97.3 ESPN. Let's go back to the text board, the Whitehorse RV text board at 609-403-0973. James in Delaware says, I don't remember the last time I saw a coach go offsides, get a holding penalty, throw an interception, or fumble a ball, says James in Delaware. At what point do you blame the roster for not winning and not the coaching staff? Well, I think it's for all sports, right? It's the idea of, it's a catch-22, James, because in some situations you do have to blame the players. Like, just because A.J. Brown, according to NFL Next Gen Stats, didn't have a ton of drops this year, doesn't mean that when I watched the game, he didn't have 5, 6, 7 balls this year he should have caught. Just in the Chargers game, he dropped a couple balls. If A.J. Brown catches that one ball, Jalen Hurts might have thrown 3 interceptions, but they would have won the game. I think part of the problem in sports is that fans look at the coaches and they think that the coaches should elevate the players. You heard what Austin Krell said about the Sixers, that, you know, maybe our perception of Nick Nurse was wrong. Well, maybe our perception of all coaches is wrong to an extent. And I'm not going to, vacate the players from doing their job. I think that the problem is that we love to blame certain players more than others. goes back to our conversation with about the quarterback position that Evan Cohen said this morning on Sportsmanlike, heard here 6 to 10 a.m. on 97.3 ESPN, that can you win a championship without a Hall of Fame quarterback? Well, of course you can. If you have a great team and the quarterback is a good manager of the offense, an operator, then you can win a championship, like we saw with Sam Darnold and the Seahawks. But we love to blame the quarterback. Josh Allen is this. Lamar Jackson is that. Joe Burrow is this. Jalen Hurts is that. Justin Herbert, Tua Tagovailoa, Dak Prescott. Fill in the blank quarterback. We love to criticize the quarterback without saying, well, maybe the wide receiver should catch that ball thrown to him. Well, maybe the offensive line shouldn't be so bad at their job. Like, look at Will Campbell in the Super Bowl. Will Campbell became famous when he was drafted because he made the comment at his opening press conference that he would die on the field to protect his quarterback. Well, he didn't die on the field in the Super Bowl because he got his quarterback almost murdered. So, it's one of those deals where it's like, you want to criticize the left tackle. But then you have these people come out there, James, from Delaware, and they say, well, you got to understand he had a bad day at the offense. Everyone's allowed to have a bad day. Well, it's the worst day to have a bad day, isn't not the Super Bowl? So I think that's where the tug and the back and forth is, James Delaware, which is when we want to criticize the player, you have people out there who want to say, you can't criticize him. That's mean. But then there's people who are willing to criticize somebody else. And I feel like it's just the world we live in, man. I don't think coaches are completely to blame. I don't think players are completely to blame. I don't think anyone's completely to blame. It's everybody. There are certain tiers to it, though. If a coach makes a bad call, it's obviously a bad on them, right? If a player makes a horrible play, makes a big mistake, it's on them. But if you go back to the Super Bowl a few years ago when Jalen Hurts had that fumble, was that fumble the reason why they lost the game? No, they lost the game because John Gannon's defense couldn't adjust. They couldn't play. They couldn't keep up. And Andy Reid did an amazing job in saying, John Gannon has shown me all year long he is incapable of making halftime adjustments. I am a future Hall of Fame coach. I'm going to adjust where Gannon can't. Gannon couldn't adjust. His defense got eaten alive. They lost the game. But there are people out there who are saying Jalen Hurts fumbled the ball. That's why they lost the championship game. That's why they lost the Super Bowl. To which I say, so what? We're just not going to blame the defense? We're just not going to blame? Well, the field. Get better cleats. Chiefs were able to play on the same field as you. We pick and choose. And then you get into semantics, and then it's no fun anymore to even have the debate. 609-403-0973 on the Whitehorse RV text board. 609-403-0973. I wanted to backtrack before we get to the other text because I was starting to hit on it. But I do think that the comment for Jack Campbell Courthouse is very interesting because we were talking about the future of the quarterback position for the Eagles. And because, we talk about how, there's speculation the Eagles could draft someone in this year's draft class. And don't mind me, I'm looking over to see if we have any updates on the Trinidad Chambliss lawsuit because he is a guy who is going to be in this draft class as long as he doesn't win his lawsuit, which is a crazy caveat in of itself. But right, so you look at this draft class, and Jack Campbell Courthouse is right. A lot of people have said this. It's not a great draft class. So if you're drafting someone this year, you're doing it with purely we're going to develop this guy for the future. And I had mentioned the idea that do the Eagles draft somebody because they already have Sam Howell in-house so they can trade Tanner McKee? To which Jack Campbell Courthouse validly asked, I don't think it's a horrible question, he says, do we also think that we already have the successor for Jalen Hurts in-house and Tanner McKee or no? To which I say no. I think Tanner McKee is a quarterback with a lot of limitations. I think that he, for as physically gifted as he is, I don't know if he's as good of a processor of information as people have presented him to be. For a guy who went to Stanford, I was kind of hoping his processing speed and his football IQ would be a little higher. A lot of the good plays he makes are the plays that you're supposed to make. And so it feels like because there are times that Jalen Hurts doesn't make those plays, when Tanner McKee does make those plays, it feels like he's better than he is. I think you've seen the limited time Tanner McKee has gotten that other teams are really good at scheming and strategizing to limit him. And he doesn't have the ability to adjust on his own. Now, that's not to say if you put him in Los Angeles with Sean McVay or in Minnesota with Kevin O'Connell, with one of those coaches, that he wouldn't have success. I just don't think that I would want a guy with that many limitations to be the guy who I'm depending on to win a championship. Because now you're ending up in that weird predicament where you end up in that weird predicament where you're trying to figure out what makes somebody have the intangibles to be a winner. And then you quickly realize, if you're being honest and fair, that, again, I know it's hard for some people. Honesty, fairness, I know it's hard for some people. I know, I get it. Josh Hennig, filling in for Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. I know it's hard to believe sometimes that if we're being honest and fair, sometimes it's what you cannot measure tangibly that is more important to win. Having the best 40 time, having the best bench press, having the best, analytics when it comes to leaping and speed and 40 time and cone splits and, or just look at that guy, looks like a football player. Like, some of that doesn't matter. Kurt Schilling is one of the most clutch postseason pitchers of all time. If you saw him and didn't know who he was in public, you would never think he's a pro athlete. You would never think he's a multiple-time World Series champion. You would never think that he has the kind of baseball resume that could and should have put him in more of a conversation for the Hall of Fame. But because he looks not like an athlete, look like a great athlete, Ryan Miner. Yeah, what happened to him? Complete bust of a prospect for the Baltimore Orioles. Complete waste. More text coming in on the Whitehorse RV text board at 609-403-0973. Stephen EHT chimes in and says, the Eagles had 3rd and inches and Sayamalu went off sides and turned the tush push into a 3rd and 5, and then the Jalen Hurts fumble happened. If Sayamalu doesn't go off sides, no fumble, we probably win Super Bowl. And guess what? You rarely hear people bring up the Sayamalu part of it. Again, it goes back to you need the team to win a championship. And so this idea that, well, if it just wasn't Hurts, it could be anybody else and we could win. And it's like, no, it can't. Not everyone can win. That draft class is probably, if things don't change very quickly, is going to go down as one of the most infamous draft classes in NFL history when it comes to the quarterback position. The Jalen Hurts draft class was supposed to be one of the most stacked draft classes in terms of the quarterback position of all time. Remember, it was Joe Burrow who was drafted number 1 overall. Joe Burrow's been to a Super Bowl, but he hasn't won any yet. Tua hasn't even been to a championship game. Neither has been Justin Herbert. Jordan Love has had some success, but not extensive success. So you're talking about a quarterback draft class with a bunch of guys who resumes are nowhere near Hurts in terms of winning. Now, what's more important, though? Is it the gaudy stats or is it winning? And I think that's where people have a lot of trouble deciphering, because Justin Herbert already has almost 25,000 passing yards in his career. Jalen Hurts only has almost 18,000. Justin Herbert's thrown the most touchdown passes of any quarterback for the 2020 NFL draft class. He's got more than Burrow. He's got more than everyone. But he can't even win in the postseason. Even Burrow has won the postseason multiple times. Jalen has been to 2 Super Bowls. But people love Herbert. They love the arm strength, the ability, the moxie. He's great in a commercial. It's great hair. Well, none of that matters. You got to win games. If Herbert, Love, or Burrow don't break through at some point, Jalen Hurts is going to become the best quarterback of his draft class. But yet there are people out there who want to replace him. How crazy is that? Jeff at Summers Point chimes in on the Whitehorse RV text board at 609-403-0973. I think he's talking about Tanner McKee when he says, I think if you played him more with the first team, he would be an absolute stud. Need to see more. I don't know how you can judge him from one game last year and third string. Well, because that's how everybody judges my buddy, Jeff in Summers Point. All right, Jeff Summers Point, great guy. But that's how we all are judging him. People are projecting him to be a stud, as you're calling it, based on the little way you have seen from him. And I don't see it from the little that I've seen from him. It's like the old, it's the blind men and the elephant parable, where, you know, I don't know if you ever heard the parable, but they teach it a lot in like sociology classes, where it's like you send 5 blind men into a room with an elephant, and they all come out to describe it, and one says, "Oh, the elephant is strong like the stump of a tree, you know, it's hard." You know, it's strong. You know, another person says, oh, no, it's thin and flaps around. Another person says, no, it's got flexibility and it bends, you know. And they're all describing the elephant. They're driving parts of the elephant. So, like, we have all seen a part of what Tanner McKee can and can't do, but we're all walking away with completely different opinions about it. And Jeff, I don't know if Hurts running the ball more next year is necessarily the answer. I think it's more of, can we get Jalen under center so we can run play action better? I think that's part of the problem with the Eagles, which is you got this great running back in Saquon Barkley. And if the offensive line gets anywhere close to what they were before, they should be great. But you got to play Jalen Hurts well, the proper way as well. Jeff from Motion City chimes in at 609-403-0973. The Whitehorse RV text board says, I wouldn't give Hurts an extension yet. Look, I don't blame you for that. That's not the craziest take in the world. Well, one, because you don't have to give him a contract extension. I mean, I'm double checking right now, but I believe he's in a contract for a few more years. Let's pull it up here. So he is technically under contract for 3 more years. So there you go. You got 3 more years to figure it out. Maybe 2 more if you want to get really extreme. I think if he proves himself by the end of the contract in 2028, you have to give him an extension. But if he regresses, you got to move on. It's pretty simple to me. Whitehorse RV text board at 609-403-0973. Steve from ESG chimes in. He says, I think, Steve, you're talking about the Chargers game when Hurts had 4 interceptions. He says, Hurts looked, he says, because he looked awful for one game. It happens. It was a huge game. He was arguably the worst player on the field. We needed that win for the 2 seed and didn't show up. I think about the Chargers game. Listen, that Chargers game was so ridiculous. And to me, that was the moment that I had enough of Kevin Patullo. The fact that the Eagles had 0 adjustments in that game was so pathetic. Think about it this way. The Eagles were the best team in the NFL in the second half of games in 2024. They scored the most points in the second half. They averaged the most total yards in the second half of games last year. They were the best at making in-game adjustments. They dominated second halves. They won a championship. This year, they were one of the worst teams in the second half of games. They couldn't make adjustments. They couldn't get the offense right in the second half. So for me, what was the difference between 2024 and 2025? The coordinator was different. Kevin Patullo, he ain't here no more. He gone. All right, we'll get to more text on the Whitehorse RV text board on the other side. 609-403-0973. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash. One more segment to go on a Thursday edition on 97.3 ESPN FM, 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City. Streaming live on YouTube at 97.3 ESPN as well as on X. More your texts. Wrap up the show coming up on 97.3 ESPN.
You're listening to the Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
Never thought this radio stunt would catch on so big.
On 97.3 ESPN.
All right, wrapping up the show here on 97.3 ESPN. Apparently, I triggered some people on the text board, on the Whitehorse RV text board at 609-403-0973. John Hamilton says, Josh Hurts is nowhere near the best quarterback from his class. I think you're confusing best at his position with being the best all-around team. Well, no, I'm not. Because if you would have heard what I said, John Hamilton, I said, if their careers keep going the way they have, if Burrow can't stay healthy, if Herbert continues to not be able to win playoff games, then Hurts is going to have the better resume. I'm not confusing anything. And frankly, no quarterback has ever won a championship without a good team around them. Doesn't exist, John in Hamilton, but I appreciate you chiming in on the Whitehorse RV text board at 609-403-0973. A texter chimed in, anonymous texter, to leave their name, and says, the Charger game with the long ball to A.J. Brown, who beat the defender, didn't make the catch. That would have been the game. Set the tone with a catch on the first series. There were multiple times that A.J. Brown failed in that game, and I think it's very, very, very difficult to judge some of these players when, okay, I have a quarterback, but the receiver doesn't catch the ball. You know, the John Hammond just mentioned Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow's offensive line is trash. His defense is trash. Does that make him trash? No. So why do we say that Jalen Hurts is only good because of his offensive line and his defense? Double standard there. Again, multiple things can be true. Jalen Hurts can not be a top 5 quarterback in the NFL and be a championship winning quarterback. Just something to think about. I'm sure we'll have more debate tomorrow. I'll be filling in for Mike Gill again tomorrow here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Thanks to Austin Krell from Sports Illustrated for joining the show. Andrew Checo from InsideTheBirds.com and Inside the Birds podcast. Thanks to Nick Earnshaw from Knicks Nuggets. And thanks to all of you who texted in, tuned in on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle, or if you caught the stream at 97.3 ESPN on YouTube and X. Have a great night, everybody.